We all have moments that we wonder what would have happened if I did something different? What if I went left instead of right? What if I didn't cut Gracie's hair and instead let my friends tease me about liking a girl? Sometimes I wonder what could have happened to me if Gracie had told my mom and dad that I should remain as a girl. What if that moment that I was given to apologize to Grace and tell her that I was wrong happened differently? Hello, welcome to OJ Studios. Please enjoy this special presentation of Punishment Alternative Ending by Olivia Julius. There are moments I think about. What if I never cut Gracie's hair? What if I didn't have to do the punishment? But the question I think about the most is, what if Gracie told my parents that I should remain as Amanda for the rest of the school year? Chapter 1: The Photo. My parents have always kept the same two pictures sitting on their fireplace. Even when I left for college and the old memory of that week started to fade away, the two pictures would be there to remind me of one of the scariest, and hardest taught lessons of my life. It brought back both bad and good memories of my life, and even though I wished my parents would replace those photos with new ones, I am still thankful that I can be reminded of what I was taught that exceptionally long weekend. Ever since I was in 4th grade, I have always tried to hide them when my friends and my extended family would come over. But somehow, they were always found and placed front and centered. The two pictures at first glance are innocent enough. Both photos are in the same frame and eclipsed in an oval border with a purple flower bordering the images. The two photos were both taken when they were in the 4th grade. The first one is of a boy clearly being forced to smile for the camera as he went through yet another boring school picture day. He was reluctantly wearing his gray and black sweater and a pair of black slacks. The boy always hated the way his mother always made a fuss over school photo day, and he wished his mother were like the other parents who allowed their kids to pick what they wore for picture day. His messy brown hair was half-heartedly combed by an exhausted teacher's aide. His hair was getting long, and now it reached to his shoulders and was oily because he did not take care of it while he was in the shower every morning. His mom tried pleading with him to cut it and even trying to bribe him to allow her to cut his hair. His mom owned a beauty salon and could easily cut his hair. But you know how young boys are. The other photo is almost the opposite. In this one, a girl was sitting neatly on a set of bleachers grinning ear to ear with a sash over her saying Easter Princess in little yellow block letters. She is smiling brightly towards the camera and loves the attention she was getting from the group of adults who was taking her picture. Although winning Easter Princess wasn't that big of a deal, to her it was a major victory. Even though she loathes being dressed up, she sat there with pride while wearing her pink dress that she got a few days ago, a pair of white opaque tights that made the girl's legs as white as snow, with no runs or holes. To finish out, white dress shoes were on her feet. Her shoulder-length hair was neatly brushed and parted perfectly in the middle. On her head was the tiara she had won for winning Easter Princess. Her mother insisted that she keep it on for her pictures. The girl does not show it, but silently she cannot wait for when her mother will allow her to go ahead back to the house and put jeans and a t-shirt on so she can go ride the rides that are pictured in the background. This will be the perfect end to a vacation. They would be headed back home the next afternoon. But if you look closely at the two pictures, you start to see odd things, like how the boy's 4th grade school picture and the picture of the girl look unnervingly similar. I mean, if you look close enough to the boy's facial features and the girl's facial features were almost the same, including their hair being the same length. Both have the same blue eyes. And both are the same age at around the same time, with the picture of the boy being about 5 months earlier. To the untrained eye you might just throw it off as just two kids that look the same. Maybe a long-lost cousin. That has been my hope for years now. If anyone asks me, that is what I would tell them. "Oh yeah, that's just Amanda," is what I would normally say, and that would normally be enough for them. But truthfully, there has been a secret that I never spoke about, one that changed my life forever. Here is my first confession. Both the photos of the boy and the girl are of me. Chapter 2: Untouchable. When I attended Little Ridge Elementary School, my dad was a head principal there. He was known to be fun around students but also strict when it came to his students acting out. To me though, he mostly let me off with a warning, or at the very least a day in the timeout room. I guess it is because I am his only kid or something. That of course gave me the idea that I was untouchable by the school's rules. I could do whatever I want to with no repercussions. Kids were afraid of me. The thought that I might use my daddy powers for evil scared some students into not being around me, earning me respect as the meanest, toughest kid in elementary. Of course, that changed by one stupid mistake. It all started the Thursday before Easter break. I sat on the playground bench with my two best friends Eric and Alex. Technically we were breaking the rules. We were not allowed to be sitting on top of the table part. But we did not care. We watched as kids in our grade played on the playground. We had to share the play area with the 5th graders, so the first recess of the day was always hectic. The only way I could keep track of the two grades was our uniform differences. Boys in our class wore black slacks and a red polo with our school's seal on it, and girls wore a black uniform jumper dress with a red polo under it. The 5th graders wore the same, but instead of red polos they wore blue. Every time I would think of these differences, I can remember every year my mom would complain about the class polos being different, and that she would have to buy new uniform polos for me at the start of every school year. But my dad would always tell her that it was a lot easier to tell who was in what grade when there was a lot of students. The only thing I am glad about, we are not in 1st grade where our class color of uniform was pink. While Eric and his nose in his Game Boy not paying attention, Alex and I were talking about what we were going to do on our Easter break when he suddenly changed the subject. "So, Adam, what do you think of the new student?" Alex asked, pointing at Gracie Thomas. Gracie arrived at the school during the first part of the week and was already very good friends with most of the girls. She had long brown hair, while most of the girls in my class preferred their hair short to keep from having to put it in a ponytail. Today she wore a blue dress that was not part of the school uniforms, which made her stand out even more. I regretted next week when she would have her uniform and she would be stuck looking like the other girls on the playground. To tell you the truth, I did think she was kind of cute. Of course, if I told my friends that I would be taken out of the group and counted as a sissy, just the thought of that sent a shudder through my spine. There was no other fatal punishment that could be dealt out than to be counted as a sissy in the 4th grade. If I was found out, I would be an outcast and forced to play with the girls or the other wimpy boys, and that would have been bad for my image. Even my daddy powers wouldn't save me. Eric looked up from his Game Boy and somehow knew that I was not going to tell the truth to them. In fact, he caught me in the act of watching Gracie with a little bit of a smile on my face. "If you like her, then you wouldn't do anything mean to her, right?" Eric asked. I remained quiet, and that was sign enough to the guys. They pushed me around a little, calling me a sissy because after all we are men, and we do not like girls. "How about you go play with Johnny down there? Maybe you can help him pick his nose," Alex said, pointing to Johnny on the other side of the playground. He was already 2 knuckles deep into his nose. His uniform was already dirty from the dirt that he had been playing in earlier. "I don't like Gracie," I said. I then stood up to face him. I pointed over to the direction of where Gracie was not whirling a rope with one of the girls in the other 4th grade class, so another girl named Amber could jump in the middle. Gracie is a girl, and girls are gross. I looked behind me as Gracie and the girl from the other class started their jump rope rhymes. Down by the valley where the green grass grows. They chanted before Amber missed a jump, causing the three girls to stop. I realized that maybe I was watching for too long and looked back over to friends. So that means if we hang around them then we are gross too? I said as if I was reading it right out of a textbook. Then I bet you can do something mean to her, Eric said. Alex and I looked at him with wide eyes. I gulped. I did not know what to do, so I closed my eyes and whispered the fatal two words that started everything. Name it, I said. Eric grinned from ear to ear. Chapter 3 Dare. Mrs. Yolkman stood with her back towards us as she wrote on the blackboard. With 3 months till retirement, she was not in the best of shape to be teaching 4th graders, and it showed every time that she entered the classroom. Since she could not hear too well, it made it easy for Eric and me to whisper back and forth to each other without her knowing. Gracie sat in front of me writing down the notes. From my seat I could see her pink glitter pink with a big flower dangling over it. Her hair was draped over the chair in a ponytail that she had just put up a few minutes earlier. I felt sorry for what I had to do, but I had to prove I was no sissy and that I could be mean to Gracie. I carefully slowly reached into my desk and pulled out my scissors from the desk and waited for the best time. Mrs. Yolkman was still facing away from us as she wrote down notes for us to copy. I honestly could not remember what subject she was teaching. Most likely about U.S. history. Mrs. Yolkman suddenly turned around and answered a question, causing me to put the scissors carefully on my desk, and I picked up my pencil and acted like I was writing notes so she could see I was behaving. I could feel sweat pouring from me as I prepared for this. I swallowed hard as I picked up the scissors with shaky hands. This was the hardest thing I have ever done. Eric was next to me whispering for me to hurry up, so after one large gulp I put the blades of the scissors around her long hair. I did not go all the way up to her ponytail holder, that would have been too cruel. Instead I aimed for a spot that was just below her shoulders. I figured after doing it there would be enough left over that Gracie could still look cute with short hair. At that moment time stood still for me. Everyone froze in place. No one had seen me put the scissors around her ponytail. They were all watching Mrs. Yolkman. Everyone except Eric, who sat there open-mouthed and in disbelief that I was going through with this. I heard Eric whisper to stop, but I was just too much in the moment. If I had a millisecond more to let my mind process what Eric said, I probably would have had enough time to stop. But instead, I closed the scissors around Gracie's hair and snipped. In one motion Gracie turned around screaming. I held her freshly cut hair in my fist, too shocked to put it down. Eric sat next to me, too much in shock to do anything else. I looked back at the rest of the class. All they looked at Gracie, then at me with her hair held in my hands. "You idiot!" Gracie yelled, turning back to me. Her eyes were already tearing up. She removed her glasses and put her hands to her face as she sobbed. I did not say anything as the classroom became dead silent. I felt every set of eyes look upon Gracie and then to me as Gracie broke down in tears. Mrs. Yolkman charged down the classroom and grabbed my hand that still had the hair. I wanted to let go of it, but I could not get my brain to outsource the job to my hand. "Just wait till your father hears this one!" Mrs. Yolkman yelled, pulling me from my chair and causing my desk to flip over, scattering all my stuff all over the floor. Mrs. Yolkman dragged me to the classroom door, where I looked over at Gracie. 2 girls were already leaning over her trying to comfort her. I was dragged down the stairs to the first floor as Mrs. Yolkman held on. The speed that she was pulling was faster than I had expected, and I fought to catch up with her. Chapter 4 School Punishment. My dad's office sat tucked away behind the school's main office. Right in front of Dad's office sat a little reception area where Mrs. Yolkman normally would drop me off, write my dad a note, and leave. But this time was different. Normally the secretary, an older lady, would stop Mrs. Yolkman from going into his office, but her rage tore through that blockade as she threw the door open with me in tow. My father did not even turn around. He was not even surprised that I was being thrown into the office by Mrs. Yolkman, even though this was the first time she had literally thrown me into his office. "What did he do?" Dad asked with a sigh, but he paused when he saw the long hair that I was holding in my hands. Dad let out a big sigh and rubbed his temples as he thought about which girl in my class had long brunette hair. "Who is it this time?" Dad asked, grabbing the strands of hair from my fist and examining it. "Gracie, sir. I was teaching my class when this happened," Mrs. Yolkman said. "The new girl?" "Yes, sir." Dad looked at me. I could tell he was mad. But I was not worried. All he ever did was stick me in the timeout area, which was just an old cubicle, and then I would have to stay in my room for a week. No matter how mad he got, he was always pushed over on the punishments. "Adam, this is the 5th girl this year that you have been sent to my office for," Dad said. I did not say anything. I knew how many girls I had picked on and I did not care either way. "Adam, I don't know what to do with you. You got the rest of the day in the timeout room, but I'm going to let your mother figure your punishment this time," Dad said. I was taken to the timeout room by one of the teachers I did not recognize. Papers from my desk were stacked up on a smaller desk inside the room. I walked inside, and the teacher closed 2 walls together until I was blocked in. "Sit down and get to work," the teacher said. I did as I was told. By now I knew the drill, and I come to know that this was not too bad. It was quiet, I could do whatever I wanted, and sometimes the secretary would sneak me in a cookie. I sat there in the chair looking at the ceiling tiles, wondering what was going to happen. Dad always punished me at school and at home. Mom always claimed that she was too busy running her hair salon to worry about punishments. But this time she was going to do it. I was allowed to leave about an hour later to get my lunch from the cafeteria. I was escorted by Mr. Ray, our P.E. teacher. I tried to strike up a conversation, but he didn't speak. Instead, we walked straight to the cafeteria. As soon as I walked in, everyone stopped talking and watched me as I walked across the cafeteria. All eyes were on me. This was my class's lunchtime, so I knew the word had gotten out to not only the other class of 4th graders and the 3rd graders who shared a lunchtime with us and knew about what I had done. Mr. Ray pulled me past the other students, obviously not wanting to stand with a bunch of 4th graders waiting for me to grab my meal. I took a tray from the stack and it smelled in the smell of chicken patty, my favorite of the school lunches. But instead of the chicken patty like the other kids were having, I got a special tray for kids who were in trouble. Instead of chicken patty with mashed potatoes and gravy, I got peanut butter sandwich and a milk carton. I walked back to the office with Mr. Ray following me and walked past my dad's office. His door was opened a crack and I could hear Dad talking. "What do you think should be done?" he asked. I could not see who he was talking to, but a female voice started to speak. "You asked her to pick out your son punishment. I personally believe it's a great idea," the other voice said. "It will teach your son." "I'm not," my dad began, but a male voice interrupted him. "Look, we are new here and we don't want to start trouble. We can help you do this. Gracie has been through an embarrassing event. Your son should do the same." I stopped for a second and tried to listen more, but Mr. Ray pushed me along and took me out of hearing range. I sat back down in my seat and ate my sandwich alone. Most of my homework was done and all I could do was sit and look at the old cubicle walls that surrounded me. And then it hit me. Gracie, a girl I barely met, got to pick my punishment. What did she choose? Her dad, or at least a guy that was defending Gracie, said I should go through an embarrassing punishment. But what type of punishment? Was Mom and Dad going to try to cut my hair? But I knew that wasn't it. Cutting my hair wouldn't have made Dad hesitant. He had been wanting me to cut my hair since the beginning of the school year. Given the circumstances, I think he would have given Gracie the clippers so she could do it herself. I reached over to a strand of hair and put it in my mouth. A nervous tick I was started to develop. I leaned back in my chair and wondered what was going to happen to me. If cutting my hair was all they had, go ahead, I'm not scared. Once 3 o'clock came around, I darted out of the office and onto the bus where I sat next to Eric. I took off my book bag and set it on the ground, thankful to see another person who was not my father again. Gracie went home early. Eric said she was crying. Then you shouldn't have made me do it, I said, even though I did not care. The only thing Dad would do was ground me in my room. By this time next week, the whole thing will brush over. The embarrassing thing that is meant for my punishment will not affect me too much. Besides, while I was in the timeout area, I already concluded that they were talking about cutting my long hair. I mean, what else could it be? The bus pulled away from the school slowly and I sighed, thankful that my dad did not make me ride home with him. Instead, I was going to be home by myself for a few hours until my dad got off work. Most likely my dad will ignore me until my mom comes home and then I will be grounded. I looked over to the seat next to me. 2 girls were staring at me, their arms were folded, and they looked mad. They were both wearing the black uniform jumper dress and red polo that girls in my grade wore, so I knew they were in 4th grade too. I guess they are in the other 4th grade class. "What?" I asked. "I heard what you did to that new girl in your class. You should be ashamed. one girl said before turning to her friend next to her. "Watch out, Mindy, he might cut off your ponytail too." I looked over to Eric for help, but he just shook his head. "Don't look at me, I'm on their side," he said, before getting out his book to start his reading homework assignment, the same assignment that I already finished hours ago in the box. "You're the one who dared me to do it," I retorted. "I told you to stop. You already proven that you would go through with it." I had to prove that I wasn't a sissy. Eric laughed for a second. "After what you did, you deserve to wear their uniform," he said, pointing over to the girls. "You're a sissy." I leaned back in the seat and looked over to the two girls. They had stopped watching me and they were both looking at a magazine, giggling at the contents. I looked at their uniforms and chuckled to myself. There is no way I would ever wear something like that. Chapter 5: Punishment. I heard car doors closing and I ran to the window just in time to see Mom and Dad both come home at the same time. My heart sank, since this is something that hardly ever happens. I watched them getting out of their cars as they talked together. Their voices were muffled so I could hear what they were saying. When they started to get to the front door, I dashed to my bedroom door and closed it. I then took my remote and turned off my TV. As Mom and Dad got into the house, I quickly spread my homework around to make it look like I was working on it, even though it was already completed an hour before school let out. I heard Dad's heavy footsteps walk across the small foyer and head straight for his office while Mom started making dinner. As carefully as I could, I went to my bed and huddled in a small ball, trying not to make too much noise. Maybe if I do not do anything long enough, they will forget about the event of today. I sat at my spot at the table. Dinner was still on the stove, so I knew the talk about what I had done was coming, and soon after I would learn what my punishment would be and what Gracie had suggested. Mom sat down in front of me emotionless and she watched to see if I would break. She quietly slid the pink slips with Mrs. Yolkman's writing on it over to me. There were two different notes, one for disrupting the class, the other for cutting Gracie's hair. "Adam, I don't know what to do with you," Mom sighed. "We have tried to ground you, but it doesn't seem to work." I silently agreed with her. Nothing they were doing was keeping me from proving to my friends that I was not no sissy. Mom bent over and picked up a large white box and put it on the table in front of me. She let me look at it in question for a minute. I did not know what was in the box, but it scared me. "So, I'm going to try a different approach and I got Gracie's help with it," she said, turning the box around so I could see all the different sides to it. The question of what was in it got bigger in my mind as I tried to take a guess in my mind. Maybe inside were the cutters to cut my hair. This possibility was getting bigger and bigger in my head. Before I could ask her what was in the box, Mom stopped me by putting a hand up. She slid the box over a little and leaned back in her chair. Obviously, she was enjoying keeping me in suspense. "You know, Gracie is a sweet and kind young girl. I would have loved to meet her any other time. You know, at a bake sale, or at your end of year party. But instead, I got to meet her when she came in to get her hair fixed after what you did to her hair. Poor girl, she had been growing her hair out since she was 6, and for her age it was amazing to see how well kept it was. Unlike my son, who cannot seem to take care of his. It's a pity that only a week after moving up here she would lose it in a stupid stunt by my own son." Finally, she took and opened the box. I watched as dumped out what was inside, preparing myself to see the clippers. But instead, pieces of clothing fell onto the table in front of me. I looked over the clothing that fell out. My eyes widened and my heart sank as I examined each article. It was not boy clothes but girl clothes. Each article of clothing that I could see looked more girly than the last. Mom picked up a dress out of the pile and held it up for me to see. She looked at it for a second before facing me and smiling. "Here is what Gracie said when she told your father and I what type of punishment you should have," Mom said, smiling at me. "If he wants to pick on girls, then he can be a girl." I looked over to Dad for help, but instead he remained standing almost unemotional and unmoving. His arms were crossed, and he was looking down at me. Almost the same way that he looked at a student that had been acting up in a classroom. That image of my dad has stuck with me for years to come. I had no help from him at all, and unless I did something fast, I might be stuck wearing these clothes. This was no way to prove to my friends that I was not a sissy. This was the complete opposite. "What?" I asked. I stood up from the table, trying to be defiant and show her that I was not going to wear these girly clothes without a fight. Mom just ignored me and continued to sort out the rest of the clothing. A pair of underwear were set down first. They were pink with a bow in the front. She also laid down a white undershirt, white tights, and black dress shoes. They were all extremely girly. Lastly, she unpacked the worst thing I could ever imagine in a punishment. She unpacked a black dress with little, short sleeves. Around the neck was little purple flowers, making this dress even more girly. "I'm not wearing this," I said, sliding the stuff off the table. I knew the effort was futile, but I had to try something. If my friends saw this, what would they think? They would call me a sissy for sure. I would have to be hanging around Johnny helping him pick his own nose, or Victoria helping her collect bugs off the field. I will be a recluse and an outcast in my class. "I think you will. Gracie was even nice enough to lend you some of her clothes," Mom said, as she held up the underwear. "And what she couldn't lend to us, Sweet took her out shopping with her parents and she picked out the rest." I turned red as I thought of Gracie picking out clothes for me to wear. She must have thought that this was a big joke, because nothing in the pile lacked girlishness. "You know, she saw this pair of underwear in the package and told me and your dad to make you wear them first, and I must agree, forcing you to wear pink panties first will be fun." "There is no way. Adam, you will wear this and other girl clothes for the rest of Easter break. I am tired of you disobeying me." I froze for a second, remembering that every Easter my family always goes to my aunt's house in Missouri. I thought about asking if we were still going there, but I did not want to make the situation worse. Part of me knew Mom was being serious, and a part of me still prayed that Mom and Dad would give me a big scare and send me up to my room with boy clothes still on, as they laughed downstairs and commented on how I got the biggest scare of my life. "If you're a good little girl, your punishment will end before school begins, so your little friends will not even know." Gracie even agreed not to tell anyone. "If you don't agree, your punishment will go on and on," Mom said. I froze. I didn't know what to do or say. I was stuck as Mom bent down and grabbed the pile of clothes from the floor and resorted them out in front of me. I thought I recognized the dress from Gracie's first day, but I was not sure since it was not on her now. The dress was black with little pink flowers along the neckline. The bottom of the dress was silky and had many layers of netting-like material, making the dress puff out. I really did not want to wear it, and if Mom and Dad were trying to scare me, they were doing a good job. Dad walked around the table and opened a closet door. On the rack inside the closet, I could see hanging up from a hanger was a girl's 4th grade school uniform. I noticed how the polo was a girl's polo, and it even had puffed up sleeves like some styles that the girls liked. "Trust me, Adam, we are not giving in," he said, taking out a pink suitcase as he opened it, revealing a few days' worth of girly clothes all folded neatly in the suitcase. I wondered if all of these were Gracie's clothes, but I knew better than to ask. "So, are you going to go upstairs to put them on?" Mom asked, trying to hand me the pile with the dress on top. "I mean, you're a girl after all, and you can't be seen in those boyish clothes, you know." I raised an eyebrow and hoped to God that I would not have to wear it, but the odds were slowly not in my favor. "I would have rather they do anything else but this. Cut my hair? Fine. Take away my TV? Fine. Make me write a sorry letter for her? Fine. But this? This was just too much." I had to think of a way out. But to be honest, I did not have time to think of an excuse. I could only stand there as Mom held the clothes out to me. I did not want to take them, and if this was just a joke, then it stopped being funny a long time ago. Finally, Dad motioned to Mom in that super secret adult sign language, and Mom grabbed me and started to pull my shirt off. I jumped, surprised that this was happening to me. Dad held my lower half as Mom came in with the white spaghetti strap on her shirt and started rolling up the bottom so it would be easier to put it over my head. I watched, held down, as the girly item with its spaghetti straps went over my head. My arms were forced through the straps as Mom adjusted them so they would sit on my shoulders correctly. I started to cry. I wished that this would just end with a warning, but Mom nor did Dad care. Dad undid my jeans and pulled my pants and my boxers as I tried kicking and squirming, trying to keep them on me, but Mom held my feet down, so my kicking failed. I could feel the pink underwear being pulled up and in place. I screamed with anger as I watched in horror. "Please don't," I sobbed, but they continued. Mom rolled up the tights and put them on my feet. I managed to kick them off, but Mom just bent down and grabbed them on the floor. She slid them on while I was kicking and screaming, and somehow, she put them to my waist. The black dress shoes were slid onto my feet and Mom calmly buckled them. Dad finally stood me up on my 2 feet. I was angry and mortified as I stood there wearing the girly clothes. Mom grabbed the dress, the last item on the list of making me the biggest sissy in the school. I stood in terror as she bunched up the dress and put it over my head. I could feel it as it fell and around my knees. The weird feeling of the skirt dancing around my legs wanted me to take it off more. I heard the zipper of the dress go up as the top of the dress got tighter around my chest. Mom bent down to my level. She motioned for me to turn around and I obeyed, and she made a bow around my chest with the purple sash. I was now trapped in the dress. I wanted to get out of it. I felt exposed from Mom and Dad dressing me. I stood in the dining room not wanting to move, not wanting to do anything but take off the clothes. Mom took my hair and she started to brush it out, making it look even more girly. Since I rejected even a trim, Mom had lots of hair to work with. She and Dad put me in a chair and she started working. The hairstylist in her worked almost automatically. But instead of cutting my hair off like I had expected, she was using scissors and combs to straighten and shape the hair to how she wanted it. "Good thing you didn't want your hair cut or else we would have a problem, huh?" Mom whispered in my ear. I cringed a little inside as I thought about how weird it would be if I were stuck wearing this and had a buzz cut like all my friends had their hair. It took her around 15 minutes for her to get done with me. But for me that was an eternity. Once she was done trimming my hair, she made me put my head back in a bucket and she properly shampooed and conditioned my hair. Me kicking and screaming the whole time, of course. But Mom did not stop. She has had 10 years worth of little kids fighting her, so she knew everything to expect with me. Once she was done, she blow-dried my hair and finished shaping it. "Are you done?" I asked, annoyed. "Almost. I'm going to curl your hair really quick." She plugged in her curling iron and waited for it to heat up. "By the way, I would hold still for this part. I don't want to accidentally burn you." "Then don't do it," I said, but Mom just shook her head. "No, trust me honey, you will look so adorable." I rolled my eyes but stayed still. I could feel the heat from the curling iron, and I did not want it to burn me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mom was done. She led me up from the chair and walked me over to the mirror in the front foyer. "There you go, now you look like my little princess," Mom said. I rolled my eyes and peered into the mirror and froze. Staring back at me was not myself but a girl. A girl wearing a black dress, white tights, and back dress shoes. Plus, she had the same haircut most girls in her class had. Instead of the wild hair that I mostly had, this girl's hair perfectly shaped her face and made her even more cute looking. There was almost no resemblance between me and this girl. I felt humiliated in the dress, and I did not want to move. The anger built up inside of me and I wanted to take everything off. This was worse than I could imagine. And then it got worse. Dad took out his camera and I could hear a click and he snapped a quick picture of me. I want to eject, but Mom was over me, ready to pounce if I said something wrong. "You're an adorable girl," Mom said with a little giggle. "Now you are to stay a girl for the next few days or else your dad will post those pictures of you at the school," Mom added. "But Mom," I said, but was instantly cut off. "If you don't want your friends to know that you like to wear dresses, then I suggest that you cooperate with us," Mom said. My mind instantly turned to Eric and Alex. What if they saw the pictures? They would run away from me at lightning quick speeds. I would be friendless, and stuck playing by myself at the playground. I would go down from the top of the social pyramid down to the bottom instantly. Then the question I had thought about earlier came to my mind. I sucked in a deep breath, not sure if I really wanted to hear it. "What about Aunt George's house?" I asked. My voice was still cracking from all the crying I had just done within the last hour. I was looking forward to the trip, but now I had mixed feelings. They would not make me go as a girl, would they? "We already made arrangements with your aunt, she can't wait to see her little niece," Mom said. I could not fully process what was going on. Did Mom honestly expect me to go all the way to Missouri, plus go to the annual Easter fair as a girl? Before I could eject, Mom went and grabbed the dinner plates and had handed them to me. I took them and started putting them on the table without a sound. "Good girl," Mom said as she walked over to the stove to stir the pasta that was now boiling in the pot. I wanted to scream, and I hoped and prayed that my friends would not come over and ask to see me. I remembered before the incident happened, Alex had asked if he could come over and grab my copy of Storm Breakout. Was he still planning on getting the game from me? As I thought about my situation, I found myself purposely making sharp turns just so I could feel the dress sway around my legs. The action was at first an automatic response. But as I kept walking, I kept wanting to see if I could make the dress sway even more around my legs. I hated it at first. It was just another reminder that I was now wearing a dress. But I must admit it was a weird feeling, and I did not know what to think of it. The bottom of the dress lightly bumped against my legs. I am not going to lie, I liked the feeling of it. I then wondered how it would feel minus the tights. I knew that I did not want to wear a dress again, but the question about it was adding up in my brain. But I knew that I could not let Mom know that I kind of liked it. That was the last thing I needed. But to my horror, Mom noticed me swaying back and forth and smiled. "Having fun, Amanda?" Mom asked. I stopped and looked at her confused. "That's your name now, Amanda," Mom said as she finished up cooking her famous homemade meatloaf. "Couldn't you have given me one that was a little bit more boyish?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Nope, sorry, Gracie picked the name out for you," she said. I froze when she said that. How much of this did Gracie plan with my mom and dad? I could not believe this was happening. I was going to be the laughingstock of the whole school. Johnny Nose Picker was even going to look down on me. I had to sit down at the table. This was just too much for me to handle. Mom turned around and saw my legs spread apart, a big no-no for girls. "Oh, honey, you can't sit like that," Mom shrieked, walking over to me. "You got to sit like a lady." I looked at her oddly before she finally pulled out another chart from the table. "Like this," she said as she proceeded to teach me how to sit down like a lady in a dress would. "See, with our legs together, Amanda," Mom said, so I closed my legs and put the bottom of the dress around my knees. I could not believe how hard it was to make sure I properly stayed ladylike, and I kind of felt sorry for the girls in my class who always had to wear the uniform jumper every day to class. Then I remembered the uniform in the closet and shuddered when I realized that if I did not do everything Mom told me to this weekend, that was going to be my fate too. "That's good, honey," Mom said. She went back to the kitchen and started fixing our plate. I started to mock her behind her back, but stopped when I heard Dad's footsteps coming in. I did not want to make him even more angry too, so I just decided to keep my thoughts to myself. I hated to be in this, and I wanted to be out of it as soon as I could. I decided in my mind that I would go along with this until after the trip, and then I could be a boy again. I meant, how long could they keep me dressed up as a girl anyways? I was now in survival mode, and I knew that I had to play them their game if I wanted to still be on top of the social hierarchy at school. Chapter 6: Dinner. We ate dinner in silence. I kept quiet. I did not want to provoke them any more than what I already did. I kept my legs together and even put my left ankle over my right ankle to keep my legs together, not knowing how much more girly I was looking when I did that. After I finished eating everything on my plate, including the vegetables, I started to go up to my room but was stopped by Mom. "Amanda, before you go to your room, please clear the table," Mom said. I stopped and looked back to her. All I wanted to do was hide in my room, and Mom was forcing me to stay out here. I wanted to roll my eyes but decided not to, in fear that it would make her more upset. So, I slowly walked around the table and picked up each plate and silverware off the table. I then riced off everything and set the dishes into the dishwasher without being told. Once I was finally able to go to my room, I shut the door carefully and walked to my full-size mirror on the other side of the door. The girl looked back at me in the mirror, which only made me madder. I did not want to look, act, or be a girl in any ways. And then I realized something. I was in my room. Normally after dinner, Mom and Dad did not bother me up here. I was free to take off the clothes and wear whatever I wanted. I pulled the dress skirt up and tried to pull it over my head, but I could not get it past my chest. Frustrated, I let go off the dress and stood there in front of the mirror wondering if I was missing something. I then remembered the bow in the zipper and untied the bow, but could not reach the zipper to unzip it. I hoped the dress would come up even with the zipper still up, and pulled the bottom of the dress up and over my head just to find that the top of the dress was still very stuck on me. I did not hear Mom walking in while I was trying to pull the dress off me. I froze, scared to move and scared to do anything. Was this going to set her off? "Amanda, what are you doing?" she asked in a stern voice. I put the dress down and smoothed it out. "Nothing," I said as fast as I could. Mom of course did not believe me. "Well, I'm running you some bath water," Mom said. "I put a nightgown on the counter for you to wear." I sighed. Now I was to sleep like a girl too. "Why can't I wear my boy clothes to bed?" I asked. I did not want to wear the nightgown while I slept. Honestly, I knew this was going to happen, but I prayed it would not have. "No, young lady, you're going to be 110% a girl this weekend, or you can be 110% a girl for the rest of the school year while you're wearing the girls' school uniform," she said before unzipping the dress and helping me take it off. I got into the bathroom and the smell of lavender filled my nose. Bubbles filled the steamy bathtub. Mom stood outside of the door and waited as I took off the rest of the clothes and handed them to her through the doorway. I slowly got into the bathtub. My nose was filled with the scent of the lavender bubble bath and all I wanted to do was hurry up and get out of the tub. But somehow, I was completely taken off guard by how the bath felt, and somehow, I started to like it. I rested in the warm water for an hour until Mom started calling for me to get out. I sighed and reluctantly got out of the tub and grabbed the pink towel that was on my hook to dry off with. On the sink sat the new girly night clothes. Instead of the Spider-Man pajamas I was hoping to see, there on the counter was a pair of blue girl's underwear and a light blue nightgown. I sighed, both tired and defeated, as I promised myself that the minute I'm alone in my room for the night I was going to take them off and put my boy clothes on. I slid the baby blue nightgown over my head. I could feel the puffy cap sleeves over my shoulder and the ruffles that outlined it after the elastic band. I also could feel the soft material dancing around my legs below my knees. I was right about earlier. The sway of the dress, or in this case a nightgown around my bare legs, was better than with tights on. I walked out of the bathroom where Mom was waiting. She looked at me up and down, almost impressed that she did not have to fight me into the clothes. "Well, don't you look sweet," she said with a smile. I rolled my eyes and went to my room. To my surprise, she followed me inside and sat on my bed. "Come here, Amanda," she said, patting the bed. I obeyed her and sat down on the corner of my bed facing away from her. Mom then took out a small brush and started to brush my hair. "That's better," she whispered. "You know, we should have done this weeks ago. I think this haircut fits you well." I wanted to say there was no way I was keeping this hairstyle after all of this was done and over with, but I did not. Instead, I just stayed put and bared the pain when Mom found a tangle. Once Mom was done, she pulled back my comforter and told me to get in. I was surprised that my boy sheets were still there, and when Mom saw my shock, she laughed a little. "I thought about putting princess sheets on your bed, but I did not see the point. With the trip coming up, you are only going to be sleeping in this bed for 2 nights. Maybe if you're bad this week I might buy you some. I think they are way better than plain old boys' sheets, don't you think?" I shook my head no. "I guess we will find out, want me?" she whispered before kissing my cheek. She got up from my bed and walked to the door of my room. "Good night, Amanda. Sweet dreams." I laid in my bed staring at the ceiling tiles, thinking about how the day has gone. I wish that this were just a bad dream and that I would just wake up tomorrow and restart this miserable day. The only thing I could think of was that today is at least over. However, tomorrow is another day. Chapter 7, Packing Up and Rolling Out, Part 2. Friday. I was at school sitting in Mrs. Yokman's class. I took notes before something odd took place. I felt something weird around my legs and noticed that I was no longer wearing the uniform slacks that I was supposed to be wearing, but instead I was wearing the girls' uniform. I was shocked, but I did not say anything. I did not want to be called a sissy. So, there I was listening to Mrs. Yokman talking about the Civil War, as I tried to hide the fact that I was wearing the girls' uniform. But then next to me came a voice. It was off at first, but then it got louder and louder. At first, I tried to ignore the voice, but it just kept at it. "Sissy." The voice kept saying. "You're a sissy, aren't you?" "No," I said, trying to keep focused on Mrs. Yokman. I was trying to ignore the fact that I was wearing this uniform. "Sissy girl." I turned my head to find Eric was the one whispering it to me. "I'm not a sissy," I said, but then I could hear Alex on the other side of me. "He's a sissy. Look, he's wearing a dress." Then suddenly all my classmates looked up and turned to face me as if they had just noticed what I was wearing. The thing was, everyone was wearing the boys' uniform, even the girls. I was the only one wearing the jumper. One boy got up and pointed at me and started laughing, causing the whole class to start laughing. I backed up and almost tripped over my chair. Then Gracie got up from her seat and turned to face me. She looked normal, except instead of having her beautiful long brunette hair, she was completely bald. I looked from her head to her hands, where she was holding her hair in her fist. "This is what you did to me, sissy," she hissed. She then grabbed the hold of my hair and started to pull. I tried to get away from her, but my classmates grabbed me and held me, preventing me from escaping. I was helpless. There was nothing I could do to stop her. That is when I woke up. I sat upright and out of breath as I slowly realized that I was not in the classroom but instead in my room. I slowly looked around the room, now dimly lit by the morning sun. As I relaxed, I patted my head to make sure my hair was still on my head. Thank goodness it was all just a dream, I whispered as I fell back onto my bed. I stayed in my bed and looked down. I still had the nightgown on, and it was weighted up around my legs. I was amazed that I still had it on and that I did not take it off. I looked over at my closet. Most the door was halfway open, and I could see that my boy clothes were all in there ready to be worn. I tried to debate to myself whether I should go ahead and get the boys' clothes on or if I should wait for Mom to tell me what I was wearing. On one hand, my boy clothes were right there. I could just pick out a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and walk down the stairs like nothing happened. Then Mom was probably too busy to notice what I was wearing, and boom, punishment averted. But then the thought of what else could happen popped in my head. If she saw me wearing these clothes, would she then get mad and take away all my clothes, forcing me to wear girls' clothes forever? Deciding against changing, I walked downstairs where Mom was cooking a light breakfast and Dad was getting the rest of our stuff ready for the trip. I examined the mess that Dad had made and debated whether I should go back upstairs and pretend to still be asleep. "Good morning, Amanda," Mom said. I jumped. I did not expect to be spotted. Mom handed me a plate of pancakes and put some clothes on the table in front of me. I could tell they were girls' clothes and I wished I did not have to wear this today and I could go to Missouri in peace wearing normal good old boy clothes. Of course, like all my hopes that weekend, they were shattered. I got done with my breakfast and I picked up the clothes and went to my room. I still had the mindset that if I played along, they would be finished with this punishment. I walked up to my room and shut the door before slowly throwing the clothes on the bed. The question of whether I should just go ahead and put my boy clothes was still lingering in my head. I grabbed a pair of yellow underwear with colorful circles all around it. Seeing them made me wonder why girls have such colorful underwear for if no one was going to see them. I put on the pair of underwear on first, trying to pretend it was boys' briefs that I was putting on. That is when I noticed something else that was strange about girls' underwear. There was no hole in the front. Instead, it was just smooth. Another thing I noticed was that I was putting it on backwards. I quickly flipped them around and slid them up to my waist. I expected there to be a dress in the bag, but instead I was surprised to take out a girly shirt. The shirt was light purple with silky sleeves that just went over my shoulder and lace covered the sleeves in the bottom. I put it on and about gagged at the knowledge that I was wearing this girly thing. I dared not to look over at my door where my mirror was, in fear that if I did, I would scare myself out of wearing these clothes. Next, I pulled out what I had thought was shorts, but when I unfolded them, I figured out that it was really a denim skirt. I rolled my eyes and unbuttoned the button and I slid it on and around to my waist. Honestly, this was the easiest thing to wear, since surprisingly it felt more like I was wearing shorts than I would have imagined. The only bad thing was, instead of going down to my knees like my boy shorts, the skirt stopped about 4 inches above my knee, making it shorter than anything I was used to. The last items in the bag were a pair of purple socks with a pink heart pattern on it and a pair of purple and pink shoes. I slid the socks onto my ankles and slid on the shoes, hoping that I would not have to keep wearing these permanently. I got up from my bed and walked over the full-size mirror on my door. I took a deep breath before looking into it. Before me stood the same girl from yesterday. There was no hint that the girl in the mirror was ever a boy, and instead the girl, even with a frown on her face, looked as if she was getting ready for a normal day. I fought the urge to go back to my bed and change out of the clothes, but I knew that if I did, Mom would force me to back to my bedroom, where no doubt, she would dress me like she did yesterday, with probably more girly clothes. After a few quick moments of hesitation, I somehow found enough strength to leave my room so I could help Dad finish packing our suitcases into the car. Once I got down there, I started the monstrous pile before him, and I was amazed how much stuff we needed to take with up to Missouri. Scattered around the living room was bags of all shapes and sizes, and in the middle Dad was putting the last of our supplies in their proper place. "Take this to the car," he said, tossing one of the bags over to me. I grabbed it and turned to go to the garage when out of the front window I spotted the car in front of the house and not in the garage where it is normally kept. I had a feeling this was on purpose. I closed my eyes, wishing that Dad would not make me do this. I divinely know that I do not want to go outside, as the girl expressly not here in my neighborhood. "Go on," he said, looking at me like I was crazy. "But it's outside," I said quietly, looking down at my clothing. Dad showed no remorse as he ordered me to go outside and put the stuff into the car. I walked out slowly, with me holding my bag tightly as I left the front door to my house for the first time since beginning my punishment. I live on a small dead-end street, so I was not worried about cars passing by more than I was to have the neighbors see me. I looked both ways making sure the road was clear, and I ran to the car. The openness of the skirt surprised me and made the weird open feeling of the skirt 100% more awkward to my little boy brain. To one side of my brain, it felt good, but the other side my brain yelled at me screaming, "You're a boy, you can't like this! Are you a sissy?" I shook my head, getting the thoughts out of my head, and I finally got to the car. I wanted to get back inside. I opened the trunk and threw the bag inside, slamming the trunk closed after throwing it in. I came back to the house to find another bag. I repeated the steps until the last, when I spotted a young woman, maybe upper 20s, and a little girl about 3 years old. I froze, not wanting to move but also knowing that if I did not, I was going to be in trouble. I took a breath and started walking normally, hoping they would not spot me. I picked up the bag and walked, thinking to myself to be a girl. I got to the car and opened the trunk and threw it in. The mother and daughter walked by me and did not even look back and question whether I was boy or girl. I smiled and walked back to the house more confident. Once the Ford was packed and my parents were finally ready to go, we left, heading west to Missouri. I got into the back seat and watched through the windows as we pulled away from the house. As we left town, I ducked low in my seat, hoping that none of my friends would spot me. I kept watching out the window of the car. To most people this would be a fun family vacation, but to me I was stuck being someone I was not. I looked down at what I was wearing. To most girls this would be a normal everyday outfit, but to me it is as alien as I know of. Chapter 8: Rest Stop. I woke up to the car slowing down on the highway as Dad started to take an exit off the interstate. I rolled my eyes as soon as I recognized where we were. Dad always stopped at this rest area when we went to Aunt George's house. It was the halfway point and Dad liked it because he could get back on the road faster after we used the restrooms. Somehow, I figured out how to fall asleep in the car with the skirt still wrapped around my closed legs. I half expected the skirt to be a mess with Mom yelling that the panties were showing. I carefully straightened up and peered out the window as we parked. In the center of the rest area stood an old building with picnic tables surrounding it. On one end cars parked while a line of semis was parked. "Okay, Amanda, we're going to go use the restroom real fast," Mom said. "Remember, you're a girl now, so you have to use the ladies' restroom." My eyes widened as a new wave of fear washed over me. Now, not only now was I expected to dress like a girl, but now I was supposed to use the restroom as one? I slowly opened the door and got out. I smoothed the skirt out and began to walk to the restrooms right behind Mom. My heart was pumping in my chest as I walked. "Think like a girl," I told myself. "Don't think as a boy," I added as I walked inside with my mom right behind me and watching my every move. Every step I took I could feel the skirt flip and flop around my legs. I tried to ignore it, but it felt so weird to me. I walked inside with Mom following me and I picked out the first empty stall and went inside. I looked at the toilet for a minute and thought about what I was supposed to do. If I was in a men's restroom, I would be peeing in a urinal, but those are not in a women's restroom. I know. I looked. I shrugged and sat down on the toilet and started to pee. This was going to be weird. If girls don't stand to pee, then that means I must sit and pee every time. This is going to be a long punishment. Once done, I cautiously walked out of the stall looking to see if Mom was waiting on me. When I didn't see her, I quickly went to wash my hands. I sighed a quick sigh of relief as my mother came out of her stall and gave me a silent nod of approval. "Ready, Amanda?" she asked, walking back to the door. I wanted to run, but I knew if I did Mom would yell at me for it. Dad was leaning on the side of the car when we came out. "About time you girls got out of there, I've been waiting forever." That was the same thing Dad has always said to Mom when she got out of a restroom after him. The only thing that changed was he said girls. I could hear Mom laughed a little before she wrapped her arms around Dad's neck. "Well, I'm glad you waited for me," she whispered before kissing him. I turned away while rolling my eyes. I quickly got into the car, so I didn't have to see them kiss. Dad finished kissing Mom and looked through the windshield at me and pulled away from Mom. "You know the tradition," Dad said while pointing over to the picnic tables. I rolled my eyes as they started walking towards the tables to eat lunch, and I knew I had to follow them to eat lunch. I kept looking over my shoulder as families came in and out of the rest stop. Mom gave me a plate with a sandwich and chips. I ate a little of my sandwich in fear that if I did not, my punishment would get worse. I kept my legs crossed in fear that someone might see my yellow underwear. I kept telling myself to be a girl, but I could not get past who I was. Finally, After a half hour my prayers were finally answered, and we left the rest stop. Chapter 9 Hotel. I was asleep when I felt Dad get off the interstate and started to pull into a hotel parking lot. I looked up to the front wondering why we were in a hotel parking lot for. Aunt Georgia won't be home until late tonight, so we have to spend the night here and go to her farm in the morning, Dad said. I rolled my eyes and unbuckled my seat belt. I had a strange feeling that this was also part of my punishment. Mom and Dad walked ahead of me and stopped at the counter as I stood behind them wanting nothing more than to be invisible. The lady behind the counter did not notice me at all but kept her attention on Mom and Dad as she gave them the room key. Once they turned around, I thanked God that we were going into a private room where I can relax. I walked with Mom to the room on the third floor while Dad went and grabbed the bags from the car. I walked in and closed the door thankful that I could relax for the first time since starting this trip. "Isn't this nice, Amanda?" Mom asked walking around the room like it was a museum. "Grand," I said in a barely audible whisper. I grabbed the TV remote and switched on the TV. The Weather Channel came on and I instantly tried to find the channel guide. "Want to go swimming?" Mom asked. I perked up. I love to swim but I knew there had to be a catch. "What will I be wearing?" I asked, all sudden concerned that I may get myself stuck in an unmanageable situation. "You'll be wearing your blue swimsuit of course," Mom said. I didn't catch what Mom just said, just the word yours came through. This was finally my chance to wear boy clothes. Of course, I did not think it through. I was so focused on finally getting to dress like a boy. Dad came in carrying 3 suitcases and Mom opened the purple suitcase that was meant for me. But then I watched in horror as she pulled out a girl's one-piece swimsuit and showed it to me. My heart sank as she put it in my hand, almost mocking me with it. The swimsuit was dark blue with black on the sides. I knew deep down inside that I did not want to wear it to the pool. "Why can't I wear my swim trunks?" I asked. "We didn't pack you any," Dad said. "Plus, it's going to be a little odd that we walked into the hotel with a little girl and went to the pool with a little boy," Mom added. "I don't want to go swimming now," I said, slowly laying back down on the queen-size bed. "You're going to look so cute, Amanda," Mom said, smiling at me as she held up the swimsuit. "Mom," I pleaded with her, but she did not give. "I would rather jump into the pool naked than wear the girly thing around a hotel." "Now Amanda, either you can put this on by yourself or we can help you again," Mom said. I froze. The thought of Mom and Dad dressing me again haunted me. I took the swimsuit from Mom and walked slowly to the bathroom. I did not want to relive the horror of having to get dressed like a 2-year-old again. I slid off the clothes I had been wearing and looked at the swimsuit. The suit, much like all the other clothes that I have worn this weekend, seemed almost what an average girl would like to wear. Like none of them were overly pink and none of them were too frilly. One thing did catch my eye when I looked for the tag that would help me decide the front when I spotted something odd on the tag. In big letters the name Gracie was visible. Was this also Gracie's swimsuit? How much of these clothes did Gracie let my parents borrow? Apparently, I lost myself way too deep in thought because Mom started to knock on the door. "Are you okay in there, Amanda?" she asked. "I'll be out in a second," I answered, getting back into reality. I looked back at the swimsuit and swallowed hard before putting my legs through the holes and pulling the suit up and over my chest. I put my arms through the straps and I could feel the straps crossing in the middle of my back, making an X, which felt weird to me. I looked at the mirror that hung over the sinks. I still looked more like a girl than a boy, plus to top all that off, my penis did not even show through the swimsuit. I walked out of the bathroom to find that Mom and Dad was already in their swimwear. Mom handed me a pink butterfly towel. I took it and instinctively wrapped it around my waist, but Mom took it. "No honey, put it over your chest," she said, rewrapping it on me. I looked down at the towel and winced. There was no way that anyone could see that this poor boy was anything but a girl. I walked downstairs with Mom and Dad right behind me. Dad was carrying a small shoebox of water toys that we usually bring with us whenever we go to Aunt George's stream on her property. I led the way to the pool where Mom picked us out a spot to sit. No one else was in the pool, so I felt more comfortable to relax into the pool and even play around a little while Mom and Dad just sat and watched me play, enjoying their handiwork. I looked around me for a second, making sure that there was no one around before I took the towel off and put it on the chair next to Dad. I breathed for a second, trying to get over the fact that nothing was around my legs. I felt scared and embarrassed as I walked to the deep end of the pool. Once I got to the 5-foot section, I looked back to Mom and Dad, who gave me a thumbs up. I nodded over to them and jumped into the pool. Amazingly, I felt like I could move around better in the swimsuit than I could in my swimming trunks. Dad walked to the pool's edge with a pool ring and threw it into the deep end. "Go fetch," he said. I smiled and dove down underwater to retrieve the ring from the bottom of the pool. After a half hour of playing in the pool hit me, I liked the clothes, but I did not like what they represent. I just had to think of them like they were meant to be boys' clothes. Most of all, do not let Mom or Dad get the hint that I like these clothes. But I did like the openness of the skirt and the dresses. I think I can be able to enjoy this punishment. Then suddenly there was a new danger. One that came in the form of a little girl named Brittany. Chapter 10. Brittany. I did not see her, or her mother, come in. Only when I heard a high-pitched cannonball, followed by a huge splash, did I realize that my family was no longer the only ones in the pool area. I shrank down into the water, only letting my head be above the surface, trying to hide the dark blue straps of the swimsuit. My thoughts started to flood as I thought about if I truly looked like a girl or not. But fear itself made me want to run up to my room and hide. The only thing that kept me in that pool was the fact that if I started to take off, that would put more and more attention on me. The girl surfaced and looked around as I sunk deeper into the water, not wanting to be seen. The girl looked around for a second till she spotted me and started to head over to my direction. I could not move as I thought about what to do next. "Breath," I told myself as I took a deep breath. The girl swam up to me with a huge grin on her face. The girl looked to be my age, she had long red hair and freckles dotted her face. "Hi," she said with the biggest grin I had ever seen. "I'm Brittany, what's your name?" she asked. I paused for a second before stuttering out a feint. "Amanda," I whispered, glad that I did not tell her that my name was really Adam. "Cool. Nice to meet you, Amanda," she said. "Do you like my bikini?" she asked, jumping halfway out of the water to show off her pink and purple bikini top. "This is my first bikini. Mom finally bought me one since tomorrow's my birthday." She stopped for a second and eyed me up and down. "Do you have a bikini yet?" I did not say anything for a second as I thought about the answer. Was wearing a bikini a rite of passage that I did not know about? Did I look like too much of a baby because I am wearing a one-piece? "No, not yet," I spoke. "I mean, technically this is my first one-piece, but I did not say anything." "Oh, you should get one. It's the best," she said. I swear she was talking faster and faster at this point. "Anyways, tomorrow's my birthday party and Mom decided to get up this hotel room for tonight and have a sleepover tomorrow here at the hotel too. Isn't that cool?" I just nodded my head, trying to understand what all she was saying. "So, you want to race?" she asked, taking off swimming as fast as she could. I figured now I was in the clear. If Brittany could not tell that I was a boy, then I was safe. I looked back over to where Mom and Dad were now sitting with who looked like Brittany's mother. Both Mom and Dad looked over at me, waiting to see what I was going to do. I rolled my eyes and started to swim towards Brittany. "Ha, ha, I win!" Brittany yelled out as she got to the other end of the pool. She got out of the water and sat down on the side with her feet still in the water as she waited for me. "Want to race again?" she asked once I finally got to the edge. Without thinking, I got out of the water and sat on the edge of the pool just like Brittany had done. I was having so much fun that I forgot all about the fact that I was still wearing the swimsuit. "No, you're better than me," I admitted. "Then you want to go to the game room and play some foosball?" she asked, pointing towards the door that said arcade and flashing lights. "Sure," I said excitedly when Brittany said that. I loved playing foosball, but I did not know any girl was interested in playing it. "Great, let's go," Brittany said before getting up and heading over to her mom to grab her towel. I forgot about wearing the swimsuit up until I got to Mom, who was holding out the pink towel to me. I grabbed it and then looked down at what I was wearing. "You're doing great," Dad whispered. "Thanks," I muttered, taking the towel from Mom. "Here, take this," Mom whispered, digging in her bag and holding out a pair of white, blue shorts. I looked at her oddly and she just shrugged. "It makes you look more modest," Mom whispered. I took the pair of shorts and put it in, thankful that I had something to cover my legs with. I looked over to Brittany, who was in the process of putting on a purple dress with spaghetti straps. The dress did nothing to hide the halter-top bikini strap, and it made me wonder why we couldn't just go to the arcade wearing our swimsuits for. I mean, if I were wearing my swim trunks, I will be allowed to just go in there without a shirt. But I did not have much time to wonder because as soon as Brittany put on the dress, she waved me to come with her as she ran to the arcade. "So," Mom said, handing me a little bag full of quarters. "Have fun with your new friend." I took off and ran to the arcade. Once in the arcade, I looked around in the faint light to find Brittany and found her by a small vending machine getting a small white ball from it. "Got the ball," she said, holding it up for me to see. "Great," I said, getting on one side of the table as she got on the other side. After an hour of playing, the hotel staff came down saying that they had to close the pool for the night. Both Brittany and I begged for them to let us have another game, but we were told that they really had to get the arcade closed for the night. We left to leave the arcade in the pool area and headed back to the room. On the way, I wrapped the towel around me like I was shown, and I walked back with my parents. On the way back, I smiled a little, knowing that somehow, I enjoyed myself in the pool, even though I was also forced to dress like a girl while doing it. As I was walking, Brittany came up next to me and held onto my right hand as we walked. I looked at her and smiled, glad that I found a new friend. "Maybe we'll see each other tomorrow morning before breakfast," Brittany said, squeezing my hand even more. "Maybe," I said before Brittany and her mother stopped at their room. "Bye, Amanda, have fun on your vacation," Brittany yelled out before going into her room. I turned around, walking backwards while waving to her. Once Mom, Dad, and I were alone again, I looked at both as they smiled to each other. I watched them until we got into the elevator to go to the third floor. "What?" I asked, looking up at my parents. "You?" Dad said with a little chuckle. "Me?" I asked questionably. "What did I do?" "Over an hour ago you didn't want to go swimming in a girl swimsuit, and now I bet that you haven't even noticed that you're wearing it," Mom said. I looked down at the suit and looked back up. She was right. When I was playing with Brittany, I forgot what I was wearing and just had fun. It wasn't until we had to leave that I remembered what I had to wear. "It's not too bad now," I whispered. Mom smiled a little and waited for the elevator to reach our floor. "Well, I'm glad you had a good time, Amanda," Mom said once the elevator doors opened. "Maybe you'll see Brittany again at breakfast tomorrow." We got into our room, and I started feeling sleepy. Without a fuss, I took the frozen nightgown that I had worn last night and slid it on before going to my bed and falling fast asleep. Chapter 11: Breakfast. I woke up to my mom and dad packing their suitcases and getting things ready for the final leg of our journey. I slowly got up and started to walk to the bathroom, when Mom stopped me and handed me the clothes she wanted me to wear for the day. I let out a soft sigh and took the clothes without argument. I knew at this point arguing would be pointless. Instead, I just headed to the bathroom. I knew better than believe that I was going to get through this without having to wear girls' clothes. I put the clothes on the counter and wished that Mom would have thought of something at least more tomboyish for the farm. A pair of pants would be better than wearing a dress. But instead, Mom gave me a red dress that had a black sash that wrapped around me below my chest. Also falling out was a pair of purple underwear and pair of white tights. I decided not to argue and began to put on the dress. In my head, I started to wonder if this is what girls must deal with whenever they get dressed up for an important occasion. I looked in the mirror and sure enough, the girl looked back at me. I sighed and picked up the pair of tights from the floor and looked at them, trying to decide if I really wanted to wear them or not. I walked back outside, choosing not to wear the tights, and walked over to Mom so she could tie the sash into a neat little bow. I stood facing away from her as she took the two ends and began tying. "You should have put your tights on first," she whispered in my ear. "Do I have to?" I asked, sighing loudly. She was quiet until she was finished with the bow. "I think you would look lovely wearing tights with that dress," she said as she pointed to the bathroom. Sighing loudly, I got up. Mom made me put the tights on by myself to show her that I could. I tried a few times to figure out how to put on the tights, but with a little guidance from Mom I was able to put them on without putting a hole in them. Mom handed me a pair of dress shoes, and I do have to admit the dress shoes did take a little help, but after a few tries I got them handled by myself. "You're becoming a very good girl," Mom said as I smiled once I got the shoes fastened the right way. I froze, hoping that I wouldn't be known as a girl for the rest of my life. I started for the door, but Mom called me back over to the bed. She motioned for me to sit, and I sat facing her, wondering what she was going to do. She grabbed a small bag out of her suitcase, and from that bag she took out a small pink tube. "This is lip gloss," she announced, opening it and showing it to me. I recoiled back and shook my head. I don't want it. I spoke. Too bad. Mom said every little girl wants to wear makeup. It makes them feel grown up. Do I have to? I pleaded. Unless you want to wear a girl's uniform to school. Mom said, shrugging. I sighed a little and closed my eyes, allowing for Mom to put the pink lip gloss on my lips. That wasn't so bad, was it? Mom asked. I began to lick the strawberry flavor gloss from my lips, but Mom stopped me. Don't you take it off, she warned. I looked at her funny. It tastes like strawberry and yet I am not allowed to eat it. Girls are weird. We walked downstairs to the breakfast room. I scanned the area for Brittany and could not find her. I sighed a little, not sure if I was relieved that she was not here or if I was missing her. I went ahead and went to the buffet and started grabbing food and putting it on my plate. I got about halfway down when I felt two arms come around me and squeeze me. It's you, I heard, accompanied with a loud squeal. Behind me. I managed to keep the food on my plate and turned around to find Brittany smiling, waiting for me to hug her back. I put my plate down, wrapped my arms around Brittany as she came in for another squeeze. Happy birthday! I managed to say, suddenly remembering that today was her birthday. Thanks, she said, practically screaming with excitement. I cannot wait for the party. I wish you could come too. I know, I wish I could too. I said, more to please my parents than anything. There was no way I would go to a girl's birthday party. Brittany was about to say something else when she was stopped by her mother, reminding her that I was holding up the line. I'll talk to you soon, Brittany said as she hurried to get into line in front of her mom. I grabbed the rest of my food and walked over to a large round table with enough chairs to fit both my family and Brittany and her mom. I wanted to sit in between my parents but was forced to sit on the end next to where Brittany would be sitting. I ate a little bit of undercooked bacon as Brittany sat down in the seat in front of me with a plate full of pancakes. Brittany drowned her pancakes with syrup. She then took her fork and started to devour the whole stack of pancakes. I wish you could come to my birthday party, Brittany said in between large bites of pancake. It's going to be fun. We're going to go swimming and have some cake, and Mom says we can have a foosball tournament. Her party did seem fun, but I had to remind myself that the party would be full of girls. Once we both finished eating, our parents allowed us to go back to the arcade for one last game of foosball before I had to leave to go to Aunt George's house. We ran out of the breakfast room and bought another ball, and we started to play before our parents could even leave the breakfast room. Once our parents got down to the arcade, we were already 2 games in, and we tied 1 win each. The last game was going to determine who was the best foosball player between us. Just one more game, Brittany begged when our parents tried to tell us to finish up. We need to know who's the best player. One more game, Amanda, Mom said. Then we gotta go. Your dad is already taking the bags out to the car and Aunt Georgia is waiting for us to come. Okay, I said before dropping the ball into the slot and letting it roll into the field before instantly spinning my guys, rocketing the ball into Brittany's goal. Nice, she said, giggling. At the end she ended up beating me 20 points to 18. I shook her hand and congratulated her on her victory. She pulled me into a big hug and started to tear up a little. But now this means that you have to go, she said mournfully. I'm sorry, I said, and before I realized it, I hugged her back. Mom came from behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. I knew it meant I had to go with her. I knew that Dad was probably already in the car waiting for us. Bye, I said to Brittany. Bye, she said, hugging me again before skipping off back to her room. I looked up to Mom as she smiled down to me. Let's go, honey, Mom said, leading me out to the car. Aunt George's farm is located just 10 miles south of the Iowa and Missouri border. Her 2-story house sat in the middle of her 100-acre farm where she lived with her only daughter and my cousin Rebecca, who was now a senior in high school. My Uncle Tom died in an accident 2 years ago, leaving Aunt Georgia and Rebecca alone on the farm. As we arrived, Rebecca came to the car and greeted Mom and Dad. And this must be Amanda, she said, smiling. She was told that I was being punished and the details about the punishment, but seeing me wearing the very girly attire made the punishment more real. I wanted to escape, but Mom forced me to walk into the house where Aunt Georgia sat at her dining room table putting candy into plastic eggs for tomorrow morning's party. Oh my Amanda, don't you look gorgeous in your adorable dress, Aunt Georgia said, standing up to give me a kiss and to get a good look on what her temporary niece looked like. I wanted to get away, but Mom chimed in and soon everyone was complimenting me on how pretty I was. I wanted to run away but I could not, and I was now stuck at what I thought was the full brunt of the punishment. But of course, there was another turn that I did not see coming. "So is Amanda entering the Spring Princess competition this year?" Aunt Georgia asked as she kept looking me up and down. "We don't have a proper Easter dress for her yet," Mom said. "That's one thing Gracie didn't have for us to borrow." I could see Aunt Georgia's eyes widen as she grinned from ear to ear. "Then I think it's time we got her one," she spoke. I stood in shock as the realization of their evil plan took place. Chapter 12 Shopping. Mom allowed me to wear girly jeans and a pink t-shirt before we headed to the mall. Even though I was happy to finally be out of a dress, it now felt weird to be wearing something as restricting as pants. I kept making sharp moves, still trying to feel the imaginary dress sway. I missed that part and found myself wanting that feeling back. We walked inside, and Aunt Georgia took us to a store called Carrie's Fashion, which from the outside of it looked like any little girl's dream. The display window was filled with mannequins dressed up in the most girlish clothes I ever seen. Above them hangers were hung with more dresses, each worse than the next. I looked over at Mom, who held a steady grip on my hand. I knew I was not going to get out of this, and I was now stuck going into a store that back home would get me a sissy for the rest of my life. Aunt Georgia explained to us that this store is owned by a friend of hers named Carrie. Mom approved and looked down at me. "Ready to pick out your new dress, sweetie?" she asked in her annoyingly sweet voice. I wanted to leave, but I was forced into the store and in the land of girly dreams. Racks of dresses were on display in the center of the store. On the walls every type of dress I could think of was hung there by size and by color. I wanted to go and to leave, but Mom held a grip on me as she and Aunt Georgia guided us to the front counter. "Georgia, nice to see you. How you are doing today?" the sales lady asked, coming around the corner and hugging her. The two seemed to be good friends who made me feel more about wanting to leave the shop. "So, who's this little cutie?" she asked, looking down at me. I did not say anything, hoping that Aunt Georgia would not introduce me as Adam. "This is my niece, Amanda," she said, patting me on the head. "We are here to find her address." I blushed and backed away as the lady walked around the counter. "Aw, she's adorable," she said, looking at me up and down. I tried to smile, but what came out was a mixture of a frown and a plea for help. "She's a tomboy," Aunt Georgia joked as she watched my face attempt the smile. "Doesn't worry, little one, we will take care of that right quick," the lady said as she took my hand to the wall of dresses and let me look at each one. "Any ideas on which kind of dress?" she asked, more to Aunt Georgia than to anyone. "Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know. I haven't seen Amanda in a dress for so long," Aunt Georgia said, smiling down at me. I wanted to crawl in a hole and hide for the rest of this vacation, but Mom and Aunt Georgia were standing in the way of the exits, trapping me in the store. Carrie led us to the racks of dresses in my size. Above the rack was a sign advertising Flower Girl Dress. "We mostly sell Flower Girl dresses for weddings," Carrie explained as she looked at them. "But we do carry some that would look great for the Easter Princess competition." I felt terror as the realization that I would soon be trying to wear one of these came into view. Carrie pulled some off the rack and put it up to me. "How about if you go try these on now and we will go from there?" she said, handing them to Mom. I followed Mom and Aunt Georgia to the dressing room, regretting every step I made towards it. The dressing room was in two parts. One part was where the family waited as the girl got changed, in the second part, Mom picked out the first dress and I was pushed inside. "I'll get the zipper for you when you come out," she yelled through the doorway. I rolled my eyes and took off the shirt and the pants. I wished I could have stayed in them forever, but I could not. I took in a deep breath and decided to look at the dress a little before putting it on. Doing this, I hoped that I could get over my fear of the dress and move on. It was a simple dress that Carrie had found on the discount rack. The top was purple with silky transparent sleeves that puffed up, capping the sleeve. Below the purple sash was a white skirt that flared out with netting to help make it look a little fuller. I slowly slipped it over my head and put my arms in the straps. Before walking out, I quickly spun around so that the dress would flare up. I truthfully missed that feeling, and I wished I could keep that feeling without the girly clothing. I walked out and stood at the doorway, making sure that Mom and Aunt Georgia were the only ones in the room. "You look beautiful," Mom said, standing up to help me out with the dress. She made me walk out a little before zipping up the dress. I prayed that the dress would be too small, but instead the zipper went up all the way and Mom announced that it was the perfect size. I did a slow spin for her and got the next dress. This dress was all white and at the bottom of the skirt were little purple flowers. I quickly put that dress on, more hoping that I would not have to keep dressing up in these stupid dresses for exceptionally long. I walked out with the back zipper still undone at the same moment that Carrie came in with more dresses for me to try on. In surprise as she came in, I quickly tried to react and accidentally made the dress fall to the ground, showing of my light blue underwear. I was originally facing Carrie and she could easily see my very not female package as a little lump through the underwear. "You're not a girl, are you?" Carrie asked, leaning on the door frame. I quickly grabbed the dress and tried to put it back on as fast as I could, wishing that I had not have done that. All eyes were on me, and I was scared. I was so scared I could not breathe. I probably just screwed up big time and ended the friendship that Aunt Georgia had with Carrie. Mom and I were probably going to be thrown out of the store and possibly the mall. I regretted coming out of the room and wish I had stayed inside for the few seconds that it would have taken for Carrie to come in and give the two adults the clothes. I looked down, not wanting to see their faces, but I knew I had to sometime. I slowly looked up and at Carrie. She still leaned on the door frame. Her arms were crossed as she waited for me to answer. Mom and Aunt Georgia both looked at me, wondering if I was going to answer or not. "No ma'am," I said. I put my head back down and this time the dress stayed on my shoulders, even though now I just wanted to get rid of it. I could hear Carrie slowly walk to the other adults and sit down on the bench next to me. "And why are you wearing a dress?" she asked. The way she asked surprised me, and I looked up to find her smiling sweetly at me. This was not what I imagined it would be like. Instead, she seemed more into the concept of boys wearing dresses, or at least me wearing them. "Amanda is being punished," Mom said, breaking the silence. I felt a little better that I did not have to explain why I was dressed like a girl. But now the reason was going to be leaked out to Carrie now. Mom explained why I was being punished for a while. I sat down on another bench facing them. Occasionally, Carrie would look over to me with a disappointing face when Mom would tell her about one of the times I was called to Dad's office. She ended with Gracie and how she gave some of her clothes to help make this punishment possible. Carrie smiled at me warmly and stood up to get a better look at me. "You look pretty good for a boy in a dress," she said. "You know, I got a dress in my back room that might be better for you." The couple was going to have it for their flower girl to wear it. But a week before the wedding they broke up and left the dress paid for here. They told me to give it to someone who deserves it, and I do believe, Mrs. Amanda, you do deserve it. I watched in horror as she walked out of the room to grab the dress. Mom undid the dress and made me walk back to the dressing room and told me to wait until Carrie came back with the new dress. The new dress was light pink and the most girlish of all the dresses that I tried on before. I wanted to eject, but I did not want to make Mom upset at me, so I took the dress and slid it on. The first thing I noticed when I put it on was that the dress had a lot of layers. More layers than the other dresses that I had tried on hand. Once I found the right layer to put my head through, I quickly got my arms through the straps. The dress had spaghetti straps which felt awkward to me at first. The dress went down past my knees and just above my ankles. The top part of the dress went all the way down to my waist before a white sash separated the two parts from each other. The bottom was filled with all types of frills that I did not want, and I could only imagine what I looked like now. I walked out to Mom, who gushed and quickly went over to me and zipped me up, telling me how much she loved the dress. "Please don't!" I begged, but Mom ignored me and turned around to Carrie, telling her that she will take it. I got back into my normal clothes, very thankful to be wearing jeans again and not the dress out of the store. I walked out of the store in front of Mom, who was holding the dress and its bag over the shoulder. I looked at it in anger as I thought about how I was going to have to wear it tomorrow and how I was going to have to wear it on stage during the Spring Princess competition. "You know what we're missing?" Aunt Georgia said, stopping in front of a shoe store. "Say no more," Mom said, pulling me into the store. I threw my head back and groaned, but followed the two women obediently into the store, wondering what we could possibly be doing in here. Mom and Aunt Georgia guided me through the rows of both boys' and girls' tennis shoes and stopped in front of an aisle with girls' dress shoes. I moaned as the two women gushed over how cute the shoes were. I just stood there quite hoping beyond hope that they would not make me try them on here in the store. But my wishes, much like everything I had wished for this weekend, came crashing down when Mom told me to sit down on a bench and take off my socks and shoes. I slowly obeyed as I took of the purple and pink tennis shoes and slid off the purple socks, revealing my bare feet. I watched as Mom and Aunt Georgia stood with their back towards me as they softly whispered to themselves as they looked at the shoes. I sat on the bench watching the two ladies, wondering why I was there for. There was already a pair of girls' dress shoes in my suitcase. Mom turned around with a pair of white low-heeled dress shoes. The heel was a lot taller than the Mary Janes that I had to wear. The toe portion of the heel was covered but the back was not, instead there was just a single strap that will go around my ankle. I looked up at my mom, wanting to plead with her that I could not wear them and that I did not like them. But I knew that if I did not wear them then Mom would get mad at me. Instead, I sat there as Mom bent down to my eye level and slid the heeled shoe on my foot and then fastened the strap around my ankle. "They're only an inch high," Aunt Georgia said. "Rebecca was your age when she first wore heels. She was proud to wear them and almost never took them off, said it made her feel grown up." I looked at her and then down to the heels that were on my feet. I did not feel any more grown up than I did a few moments ago, plus I could not tell why anyone would ever want to wear something like this. "Okay," Mom said, taking my hand. "Slowly stand up." I got up with her help and slowly wobbled for a second as I slowly got steady enough to stand by myself. "Do they fit alright?" Mom asked. I looked down at her, not sure of how to reply. I never worn heels before, and I did not know if the weirdness of wearing a shoe that was elevated at the heel was normal or not. "I guess so," I whispered. Mom took my hand again and told me to walk. I looked at her, wondering if I could even take a simple step in these heels. "Go ahead, take a step." I took a cautious step forward ever so slowly as I wobbled a little. I used Mom to help keep me balanced. We walked up and down the aisle like that a couple of times before Mom stopped me by Aunt Georgia and then told me to go by myself. I looked at her a little frightened, but she just pointed to the end of the aisle. I looked at the end of the aisle and gulped as I put one foot in front of the other. My feet felt like jelly as I took my first steps forward. I slowly got to one end of the aisle and then back to the other end. Mom and Aunt Georgia looked at me approvingly and I could not help but smile. Somehow this minor achievement was one of the best things that has happened to me this weekend. I sat down and Mom helped me remove the heels and place them into it as the box. Aunt Georgia grabbed another box that was sitting on the bench and showed me its contents. Inside was another pair of heels, just these had the heel and the toe completely open. When I bought Rebecca her first pair of heels, I bought her two. One to get used to and the other to wear for formal occasions. Aunt Georgia said. Of course, she had had a month to get used to heels before she became a flower girl. "You will just have to make do with a day." I nodded my head and took the box from her. "How about we go ahead and put them on, and you can try them out while your aunt and I look for shoes for ourselves," Mom said, taking the shoes from me and putting them on my feet. I got up and slowly started to walk down the aisle while Mom and Aunt Georgia walked to another aisle. I stood up slowly and began to slowly walk down the aisle, trying to keep my balance as I attempted to stay sturdy on my feet. I smiled a little as I thought about how I was doing this. But then I stopped when I heard voices coming from the other side of the aisle and getting closer. As quickly as I could, I went back to the bench and sat down and pretended to be reading the side of the heels shoe box. The two girls both wore blue jean skirts and tank tops. The older girl was wearing a pink while the younger girl, Emily, was wearing light blue tank top. "OMG Emily, I can't wait for tomorrow!" A girl who was the same age as I said as two girls walked into the aisle. "Oh, I know you are so totally going to win Easter Princess," the second girl, who about a year younger, said. The two girls walked in front of me and started looking at the heels. "Just think Emily, this year I will get Spring Princess, and once I get into middle school I will get Spring Junior Queen, and then in high school I'll finally get Spring Queen just like my sister." "I can't wait, Rhea," Emily said, looking up at the older girl. "Exactly, and don't worry girl. For your help I will make sure that you picked every year after me. Don't worry, we're in this together." Rhea tucked a strand of her long brunette hair behind her ear as she looked over. Almost trying to mimic her, Emily did the same thing. "Daddy should have my dress ready soon, it's been costume designed by a famous designer in New York," Rhea said. "Who?" Emily asked. "Does it matter?" Rhea asked, and the two girls giggled a little. But aren't you worried about the other girls? Emily asked. Rhea looked over at Emily and let out a little giggle. Girl, please! There is no competition. I am the most popular girl in school, I am way prettier than the other girls, and I am a Troyer, my family is a legacy in this town. There is no way I won't win. The two girls moved to the end of the aisle, still never acknowledging me. But what about girls that are not from our school? Who? Rhea asked, stopping and looking at me. I stayed quiet and reread the sparse information on the side of the heel box. That girl? Rhea pointed at me and laughed. I have never seen a girl that screams tomboy more than her. I mean, look at her generic pink shirt, short hair, and look at those heels that she is wearing, they're from the cheap rack. I tried to keep my cool as I pretended not to hear them and focus on the box. I could beat her in an instant, Rhea said. Hell, I bet she's probably got an old worn-out dress that her mommy's going to make her wear. Both the girls started to laugh as they left the aisle. I could hear them giggle all the way out of the store as I finally put down the box. I sighed a little bit and stood up and wobbled over to a mirror and looked at myself. I did look like a tomboy, and if I wanted to beat Rhea and Emily, then I was going to have to change that. I was going to have to forget about being Adam, the boy in a dress, and start being Amanda, the very girly girl. From that moment on I had a new mission. I had to beat both Rhea and Emily. Both Mom and Georgia came back to the aisle soon after. Are you ready, Amanda? Mom asked. I nodded my head yes. Good, because your Aunt Helen and your cousin Ethan are at Georgia's house waiting on us. I stopped in my tracks. My heart started to beat faster in my chest, I had forgotten about them coming. Chapter 13 Family. I watched out of the window as Mom drove down the little country road to Aunt Georgia's house. Dust kicked up from the tires as gravel pelleted the side of the car. I watched out the window as fields flew past. But I could not focus on what was going on outside for long. I knew that once we got back to Aunt Georgia's house that Ethan was going to see me, and I had no idea how he was going to react. Ethan is 11 years old and next year will in middle school. I have always looked up to him. But now I was afraid to think about what he might say. I looked down at the heels that Mom made me wear out of the store and sighed. I know I had made the goal to beat Rhea and Emily in the Spring Princess contest, but suddenly now I started to rethink my plans. Mom slowed down the car, waking me from my thoughts. I watched as Mom pulled into Aunt Georgia's driveway and parked it next to Aunt Helen's car. Ready or not? I whispered to myself as I opened the car door and slowly got out. Mom went around to the back of the car and grabbed the bag containing the shoes and handed it to me. I took the bag and walked into the house while trying to ignore the fact that Mom was carrying the dress that I was going to be forced to wear tomorrow. Aunt Georgia opened the door and we all walked inside to find Rebecca and Aunt Helen sitting in the living room playing cards on an old worn-out card table that was placed in the middle of the living room. This must be my new niece, Amanda, Aunt Helen said as she got up from the card game and coming over to hug me. Just look at her, she's so adorable, Aunt Helen gushed. I looked up at her, almost begging for her to stop. Ethan, gets over here and see your little cousin. I pulled away from her and looked towards the kitchen to where I could hear her footsteps come from. Ethan came in with one hand holding a can of Dr. Pepper and the other hand holding his cell phone. I could see through his glasses that he had been checking his Facebook before coming in. As soon as he entered the living room, he pressed the lock button on his screen and instantly his phone went dark. Ethan looked up at me for the first time since we arrived. He tilted his head a little, not sure if the girl standing there was me or not. Whoa, Adam, is that really you? Ethan asked, looking me up and down. Remember Ethan, Aunt Helen calmly said, gently putting her hands on my shoulder. This year Adam is Amanda. Aunt Helen said, and I expect you to treat her with kindness and respect. Yes, Mom. Ethan said. I think it's great to teach Amanda some respect for girls. I only wish I had thought about doing that when Ethan got caught looking up a girl's dress. I was 5, Moms. Ethan said in a stern voice, and in kindergarten. Still, you would have looked cute in a fluffy pink dress. Aunt Helen said before switching her gaze back to me. So, Rebecca told me that you got a new dress for tomorrow. Yes, I said quietly. I did not notice Mom behind me grabbing the dress and taking it out of its protective bag. Oh, would you look at that? Aunt Helen said, gasping. I looked behind me just as Mom put the dress in front of me, showing her what it would look like on me. I could feel my face blush as I looked over at Ethan, who rolled his eyes as he dropped onto the couch and sipped his soda. I could not help but wonder what he was thinking. The three women both gushed over me for another minute before finally leaving the living room and going off to the back porch where Dad was fixing a large barbecue grill for tomorrow. This finally left Rebecca, Ethan, and I alone in the living room. "I think you look pretty as a girl," Rebecca said as she cleaned up the cards from the card game. "Thanks," I muttered. "I can't believe your parents thought of that punishment," Ethan said, looking over his phone. "It wasn't her parents," Rebecca corrected, "it was that girl in her class." "What was her name?" "Gracie," I muttered. Thinking back to that moment, it seemed odd to me that it had only been a few days ago that I had cut Gracie's hair. "So, my guess is that you like her," Rebecca said, prodding me with her finger. "No," I said. But I could tell Rebecca knew the truth. "Well, whatever the reason, I hope you learned your lesson," she said. "I have," I spoke. "Don't worry." "Good," Rebecca said, "I hope this one over here has learned his lesson about looking up my dress 6 years ago." Rebecca pointed over to Ethan, who looked up from his phone and through his teeth muttered, "I was in kindergarten." Chapter 13. Out to eat. After an hour of the adults being gone, they finally came back inside and announced that we were headed to CJ's Steakhouse. As soon as they said that, my mouth started to water. Going to CJ's Steakhouse was one of the best things about coming here. "Just give me a minute to get ready," Rebecca said as she ran upstairs to her room. I looked over to Mom, expecting her to make me wear something more girlish, but instead Mom was over by her two sisters talking. I tried to put out the idea that was in my head out of my mind. But somehow, I could not. It was a promise I made to myself back in the store to be more girly so I can beat Rhea and Emily. I sucked in a deep breath and walked over to Mom and got her attention. "What is it, sweetie?" Mom asked, guiding me away from the other ladies. "Do you mind if—" I stopped for a second and looked back at the ladies and made sure they were not paying attention to Mom and me. "Do you mind you what?" Mom asked, looking down at me. "Do you mind if I wear a dress to dinner?" I asked before I could stop myself. Mom looked at me and then back to the group of ladies. "You do know that wearing a dress tonight won't excuse you from getting off your punishment early, right?" "I know," I said, even though a small part of me hoped it would. "Rebecca washed the clothes that you wore during the past few days. They're up in the guest room. How about if you go upstairs and pick one out?" Mom said. I nodded my head and walked upstairs to the guest bedroom, where I found a laundry basket halfway filled with the girls' clothes that I had been wearing for the last few days. I took off the clothes I was wearing and dug through the clothes in the laundry basket and found the black dress I had worn on Thursday. I grabbed it and put it on without a second thought. It kind of amazed me that last time I was wearing this I was kicking and screaming at Mom to take it off me. Now I am totally comfortable in it. Honestly missed the open feeling that the dress gave me when it sways around my legs. I wish boys could wear them. I saw the tights I wore when I got to Aunt George's house, and I thought about wearing them, but then I decided not to. I knew that Mom was probably downstairs right now thinking this is a win, but I did not care. I needed to beat Rhea and Emily. I put the heels back onto my feet even though they were racing by this point. I tried to zip up the dress, but I could not reach the zipper, plus I did not know how to tie the sash. I decided to open the door and call out to Mom for help. I walked to the door and stopped. I started to have second thoughts about doing this. What was Ethan going to say when he saw that I was wearing a dress? Was he going to make stupid comments about me? Was this the end of our friendship? I sighed and turned the doorknob. He was going to see me in a dress tomorrow no matter what, so I might as well get it over with. I opened the door just as Ethan walked by from the bathroom. I looked at me in shock and I did the same. I held the unzipped dress over me, keeping it from falling like it did in Carrie shop. I felt like ducking back into the room and ripping the dress off and throwing it on the bed. But I could not move. I was scared too. I could not tell by Ethan's reaction if he was mad or not. I started to back up and close the door, but Ethan stopped the door from closing. I looked down and kept backing up. But Ethan stopped me. "You look great," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, I won't make fun of you." I did not know how I could trust him, but somehow, I knew. "What do you think?" I asked shyly. Ethan looked me up and down. "Not bad," he spoke. "Did your mom make you wear a dress for dinner tonight?" "No," I admitted. "It was my idea to wear a dress to dinner." "Well, you're lucky. Ethan said Mom just told me to come up here to put on my stupid sweater that she got me just for tonight. Ethan said going around me to grab his suitcase. Trust me, I'm jealous. I would give anything to wear a short-sleeve dress instead of a heavy long-sleeve sweater. Then you can have it, I said jokingly. Ethan looked at me and grinned. Nah, it's your punishment, not mine, he said as he started rummaging through his bag. He grabbed his sweater and walked out of the room, only stopping for a second. Besides, I wouldn't look very good in one since I have a buzzed chew tee, he said, pointing up to his head. I laughed a little, thinking about him wearing a dress. Ethan came from behind me and took the two parts of the unzipped dress. I forgot it was still unzipped. Here, figured you needed help, he spoke. No problem, Ethan said, shrugging. My mom a few times has me help her zip her dress up or tie a sash occasionally. Honestly, I do not get why girls wear clothing that requires two people to help them wear it. It makes them look cute, I said, shrugging before walking out of the room as Ethan stayed in the room to change. CJ's Steakhouse was in a part of town that tourists never visit. The small restaurant was located off Main Street, and unless you are looking for a simple storefront design, most likely you would overlook this small town gem. Our large group went into the main entrance and waited until the restaurant staff were able to push a few tables together. We were led to a large table in a side room. I looked around as we walked. A few days ago, I would have been terrified to be wearing the dress in front of them, but now wearing a dress almost seemed natural for me. The adults sat on one end of the table while us kids sat on the other. I sat next to Ethan and Rebecca and looked down at the menu that was put in front of me. "And what would you like to drink, ma'am?" I heard the waiter ask, but it was only until Ethan elbowed me before I noticed he was talking to me. "Dr. Pepper," I said softly. The waiter nodded his head and walked off to collect our drinks. "Still not used to the new pronouns?" Ethan whispered, only loud enough for me to hear. I shook my head no and hoped that I would never get used to being called ma'am. Chapter 14, Sunday morning. I awoke to the early Easter Sunday morning sun coming through the guest bedroom's windows. I looked around and still saw Ethan asleep on the other side of the room. Both Ethan and I had to sleep in the same guest room, while both of our parents got to stay in the in-law suite that's located in a converted detached garage. I didn't mind sharing a room with Ethan though. We treated it like one of our many sleepovers we have had in the past during family reunions. Ethan didn't mention my punishment or ask any stupid questions on how the past few days of me being a girl is doing. I was surprised. I expected him to pick on me and call me names. Instead, after our dinner at the steakhouse, Ethan and I went to the guest room and played on his Game Boy till Aunt Georgia made us go to sleep. Rebecca, however, was different. While Ethan played his Game Boy, Rebecca and I sat on my bed cross-legged. I had the black dress still on and wrapped around my legs, keeping it modestly around me so I wouldn't show Rebecca my underwear. Rebecca put a small table on both of our laps and told me to put both my hands on the table with my fingers spread out. I did what she told me to do, and she grabbed a bottle of pale pink nail polish from her small makeup bag. Seeing this, I instantly curled up my fingers. "Don't worry, Amanda, it's just fingernail polish," Rebecca said with a giggle. "I don't care," I said, taking away my hands. Rebecca grabbed them and placed them back on the table. "They will look nice with your dress tomorrow," she said. "After the contest we can take it off. I promise." I sighed, knowing that I didn't have much of a choice, and let her paint my nails. Besides, this might give me a step up when I try to defeat Rhea in the contest. I looked at my nails now, almost 10 hours later. It was weird seeing my nails painted a girly color. Of course, I was used to seeing the girls in my class with painted nails, but I never thought that I would be stuck having mine painted. I pulled the covers away from me and slowly tiptoed out of the room and into the bathroom. Once in there, I was surprised by how girly I still looked. I was wearing a nightgown that Rebecca had picked out for me. It was a Barbie princess gown, which was pink with ruffled cap sleeves and had a few sheer see-through layers that were rainbow colors. The word Barbie was written across my chest. It is by far the girlish thing that I have worn yet. With the notable exception of the pink dress I was to wear later today. Mom greeted me through the door. I finished using the bathroom before opening the door. Mom stood there with my clothes that I was to wear before the contest. I was surprised that it wasn't a dress, but instead it was a pair of girly blue jeans and a pink tom that had ruffled sleeves and had a picture of a pony in sparkly gray ink. "So, I don't have to wear a dress all day?" I asked cautiously. "Amanda, the contest isn't until 3 o'clock. You will have plenty of time to change into your dress. But for right now we need to get going and help your aunt out over at where the Easter fair is going to be." I nodded my head and went back into the bathroom to take my bath and to change. I was kind of disappointed though. I was hoping to be able to get some last minute practice in with my heels and walking in a dress. Last night at the steakhouse I almost tripped and fell if it hadn't been for a waitress who saw that I was about to fall and grabbed me in time. I started the warm bath water and dropped in the bath bomb like Rebecca had instructed me to. The room instantly smelled of lavender. If you were talking to me a week ago, I would tell you that you were crazy for thinking that I was going to be willingly making my morning bath as girly as it is, but now it seemed almost normal. Besides, I need to beat Rhea, and if this is how I must do it, then so be it. After I got done with my bath I quickly changed into the clothes and walked downstairs where Aunt Georgia was making pancakes. Mom and Dad were no far to be found. "Your mom and Dad are already at the festival. They are helping to set up the stage and audio equipment," Aunt Georgia said when she saw that I was looking around for them. "We will see them after breakfast." I sat down at the table and Aunt Georgia put a plate of pancakes in front of me. The pancakes have a smiley face on it with a piece of bacon as the mouth and 2 small sausage patties as the eyes. I thanked her and began eating just as Rebecca and Ethan walked in. Aunt Georgia handed both some pancakes and then sat down with her plate to join us. "So, are you going to be the first boy to win Easter Princess this year?" Rebecca asked me. "Has any other boy tried?" I asked. "Aaron Tipton tried a few years ago. He did it more out of a bet with his friends. He had won Easter Prince the year before and he wanted to prove that he could win Easter Princess this year. He wore a blue dress that was 3 sizes too big that he had borrowed from his older sister, did a rough makeup job, and since lace had been a problem that year, he sported a buzz cut. He did it more as a joke than being serious. Everyone knew who he was and either laughed at him or tried to get me to change the rules of the contest. Of course, I declined to since there are no rules saying a boy can't compete, and Aaron with the E went up and tried to win." "How did Aaron do?" I asked. "Dead last," Rebecca said. "That was the first year I got to compete in the Easter Princess contest. I got first place and crown that year and Aaron left before our group photo. The newspaper did get a photo of him on stage and placed it on the front cover of the Easter special edition." "Wow!" I said, looking down at my plate and hoping that won't happen to me. "Don't worry Amanda, that will not happen to you," Rebecca said, almost like she was reading my mind. "You look 1000% more girly than Aaron did. He just did it as a joke. You're doing this the right way." "I hope so," I said, feeling the butterflies start to form inside of me. "I really hope so." Chapter 16, Setting Up and Getting Ready. Ethan, Rebecca, and I sat in the bed of Aunt Georgia's pickup truck as she drove us out to where the carnival is. I watched as dust came up from the tires as we rocked down the road, hitting almost every pothole. I was both excited that I was going and kind of scared. I don't know what to expect. Most of the kids my age that will be here won't recognize me. Since I'm only interact with them once a year, I know they won't call me out for being a girl this year. But the fear remained. Aunt Georgia stopped her car in the makeshift parking lot that was one of her corn fields. As we got off her truck, she handed us a case of water and instructed us to deliver them to the stage. I followed Ethan as I looked around at the area. When Aunt Georgia first started hosting the Easter Carnival, it was nothing more than a few arts and crafts stations for kids and an Easter egg hunt. Now it was what more than that. A local business that rents out carnival rides volunteer their rides every year so they can test them after the long Missouri winters. They can also use this to train their new carnies. Since then, it has been getting bigger and bigger to the point that people come from across the state just to go to it. The makeshift stage where the contest was to be held was on top of 2 of my aunt's flatbed semi-trailers that were parked end to end. A box semi-trailer was behind them and painted on it was a pink Easter bunny with the words Easter Fair on it. There are doors cut out on the side of it so people could go from backstage to the stage without having to climb up the outside of the trailer. Everything must be movable. In a few months everything on this field will be gone and corn will start to grow just in time for Aunt Georgia to host a Halloween fair complete with a corn maze in this very field. There's never a dull moment at Aunt Georgia's farm. After an hour of working, Rebecca called me over so I can start getting ready for the Easter Princess contest. We went into a small room located inside the back of the van trailer where the pink dress was already hung up on a shelf. Mom was already inside sitting at a small desk. Next to her was a pair of white lace tights and heels that Aunt Georgia bought for me. I sighed a little bit as I realized that this was it. The last few days of the punishment has reached its height. I could have never predicted that I would be stuck being in the Easter Princess contest as a girl, but here I am sucking in a deep breath watching Mom as she took the dress off the hanger and instructed me to get undressed. I did as I was told, and Mom started to roll up the tights and waited for me to be ready. I sat down on a bench and took the tights and put them up on both of my feet as I did. Mom got the dress ready for me to put it on. On Thursday I fought to not wear a dress, now here I am willingly putting on one of the girlish dresses I have ever seen any girl wear. Ever! Mom zipped up the dress and tied a bow in the back. I looked in a small mirror on the wall and the girl in the reflection looked back at me. I still can't believe that the girl is me. Mom took out her makeup bag and started to lay out some of her makeup as she told me what they were. Words like blush, lipstick, and mascara all went over my head, but Mom just sat me down and promised that she would make me look as pretty as possible. After an hour of Mom putting makeup on me, I was finally able to leave the trailer. I wobbled a little on the heeled shoes and walked onto one of the flatbed trailers. There I was, both Rebecca and Ethan sitting on the edge talking. Both had changed into their Easter outfits. Ethan was wearing a light blue shirt with a black sweater vest and black slacks, while Rebecca was wearing a black and yellow sleeveless dress with a sunflower print all over the skirt of the dress. "Hey!" I said, getting their attention. Rebecca was the first to look up, and when she did her face lit up. "You look amazing!" she said, getting from the edge and coming around to see me from different angles. "Oh, my goodness, I love the dress!" "Thanks!" I said shyly. Ethan followed her up and looked at me up and down. "Looks nice," he said before playing his game. "With that dress you will be for sure the winner," Rebecca continued. "I can't wait." I sighed a little as I realized that I couldn't wait either. There is no way I couldn't lose to Rhea at the contest. I looked around as people started to show up. Some of them were already picking what seat on the bleachers they were going to be sitting. Behind them I could see rides were still running, and I couldn't wait to get out of this dress and ride them afterwards. A voice came from left-hand side of the stage that surprised me. I looked in the direction of the voice and saw her. "Amanda, it is you." Chapter 17 Easter Prince. Brittany ran over to me and hugged me as tightly as she could, while also loudly explaining to me how much she had missed me at her party last night. I did my best to match her excitement, and finally she let go of me. "I want you there next year!" Brittany exclaimed. "We're going to have so much fun!" "Sure!" I said, forgetting momentarily that by the time I come back here next year I will be back to wearing boy clothes and going by Adam again. "So do you like my dress?" Brittany asked as she started to walk like she was supermodel. Brittany was wearing a light green dress with transparent lace sleeves. Her dress went down a little past her knees, with the skirt being puffed out by netting. She wore white tights with green-heeled shoes that were a little taller than mine. She also had earrings in her ears that had little green diamond studs. Her hair was in a messy bun behind her head. "You look nice," I said with a little smile. Dressed up she was even more pretty than most of the kids in my school, even Gracie. "Well, you look nice too," Brittany said as she followed my lead and sat down next to me in the front row of chairs. Over the loudspeaker we could hear the call go out for the Easter Prince contest. I looked around as boys my age walked sheepishly to the stage with their parents following them. I can still remember going up there with my mom practically pushing me up those steps 2 years ago. The 5 boys stood awkwardly as they stood front and center on the stage as the mayor of the town introduced them one by one. After each boy was introduced, the crowd would politely clap their hands. All of them looked like they didn't want to be here. Unlike the Easter Princess contest, the Easter Prince contest wasn't that big of a deal to the boys. They didn't buy special suits for this, they didn't make sure their hair is perfect or makeup is in the wrong shade. In fact, one of the boys is currently just wearing a t-shirt that says "Bite Me" and blue jeans. I go to school with the third one. Brittany said, whispering to me while pointing up to a blonde-haired boy who looked just as miserable as the others. "He's in my class and he's so cute, don't you agree?" I nodded my head but didn't say yes. How could I tell her that I wasn't interested in boys, and being too interested in girls got me stuck in a dress in the first place? When the mayor introduced the boy, I found out his name was Seth. He was my age, and he only had a father for the mayor to announce. When he was asked by the judge panel a question, he shyly answered it. "I hope I get Easter Princess," Brittany said dreamily. "I can have a picture with him and maybe he can say he likes me." "He hasn't even won yet," I reminded her. "He will," Brittany said reassuringly. "Look at him, he's the cutest one up there." I looked back. Up there, out of all the boys that were up there, Seth I guess looked the best. He did look a lot better than the boy who was wearing the Bite Me shirt, who according to the mayor is 2 years younger than me and named Ryan. I wouldn't mind if Brittany won Easter Princess. She did want it more than I did, and she wasn't Rhea, so she would be the best to take over the role. Just if Rhea didn't win, I would be happy. I looked around for Rhea, having not seen her yet. She had told her friend Emily that she had gotten her dress from a designer in New York, and I was curious to see what it looks like. Brittany elbowed me, waking me up from my thoughts. The mayor was on the stage again with the judges' results. "He's got this for sure," Brittany whispered. The mayor stepped to the front of the stage and waited for the audience to quiet down before he called out the runner-up. "If the new Easter Prince cannot fulfill his duty, then you are to act in his place," the mayor said before calling out Mr. Alex Timberman. I looked over at Brittany, who seemed to be relieved that it wasn't Seth. A boy to the right of Seth stepped forward and took the Easter Prince runner-up sash and put it over his head. The mayor also gave an envelope that contained a $50 gift card inside. "Now for this year's Easter Prince, the winner is..." I swear I heard Brittany suck in the biggest breath of anticipation ever. She looked like she was about to burst if she didn't know who was going to win. "Seth Evans!" Brittany stood up and clapped as Seth stepped forward and accepted his Easter Prince sash and envelope containing a $100 gift card. "I can't wait to win Easter Princess now!" Brittany squealed with excitement. "Of course, I don't care if you won, that would be great too. But if I won, then Seth might finally notice me." The boys all shuffled off to get their pictures taken on an empty set of bleachers. The mayor then announced that it was the girls' turn and the contest would start in 10 minutes. I sighed as I got up with Brittany, who practically pushed me up the stairs. "This is it," I told myself. "Let's beat Rhea." Chapter 18, Rivals and New Friends. You know that odd feeling you get when you feel oddly like a fraud, and you shouldn't be somewhere? Yeah, that's how I feel right now. I am a boy, dressed as a girl, getting on a stage so I could win a girly contest. I was stuck doing all this just because I cut off some of Gracie's hair on Thursday. I could already feel the imposter vibes coming off me. Brittany pulled me up to the stage and I stood next to her as other girls slowly came up. I was given the number 3 and Brittany was given the number 2. The girl that had beat us up to the stage was younger than both Brittany and me. If I had to guess, she was just old enough to be in the contest, so she was maybe 7 or 8 years old. She was wearing her hair in a loose ponytail and had a light purple sleeveless dress on. It took me a second to realize where I had seen it from. Then it hit me, it was the same type of dress that I had tried on yesterday in Carrie's fashion. Rhea and Emily were the last 2 to get on the stage. Emily was given number 4 from the mayor and told where to stand. She was wearing her hair in a messy bun and wearing a white dress with a blue open front long sleeve sweater. Her makeup was done almost perfectly, making her look both older and prettier than when I last saw her at the shoe shop. If she hadn't been planning on basically throwing the contest in favor of Rhea, then I think she would have a chance at winning. Rhea came on the stage wearing her hair down. It had been curled and professionally styled since I saw her yesterday. Her makeup was also done professionally, just like Emily's. She wore a gold long chiffon dress, with cut-in shoulders, a scoop neckline adorned with beads, and what Rebecca told me later, it had the handkerchief hem skirt, which was the biggest fashion trend in their little small town. Rhea was also the only one of us who wasn't wearing tights. On her feet were long high-heeled sandals that were taller than my heels. I am now nervous. There was no way I could beat Rhea, or Emily, or Brittany or the little girl that was currently waving to the crowd down below, most likely to her parents. I'll probably end up like Aaron Tipton and be the second boy in history to get dead last in the Easter Princess contest. Good luck! Brittany whispered. I thought she was talking to me, but when I looked over to her, she was bent forward to say it to Rhea and Emily. Oh, little girl, I don't need luck. Rhea whispered back while looking at her freshly manicured nails. I'm a legacy at this place. My sister won Easter Princess and last year was Easter Queen. This contest is already in the bag. You should just leave now. You and your little tomboy friend. We will see, Brittany said, I'll wave at you when I win Easter Princess then. Oh, and don't even think about being running up, that will go to my friend Amanda. Brittany held my hand and lifted it up in the air. We got this! Brittany whispered in my ear before letting my arm down. I gave her a smile and nodded. We got this! I repeated a little bit more convinced. I looked back at Rhea. Yes, her sister winning might make her think she's legacy, but has she ever tried to win both Easter Princess and Easter Prince before? Besides, Rebecca also won Easter Princess and Easter Queen. Doesn't that make me somehow a legacy too? There was a new fire in me that wanted nothing less than to see Rhea walk off this stage with a participation ribbon. I was going to be the new Easter Princess, or at least runner-up. Good luck! I whispered to Brittany, taking her hand into mine. You, too! She whispered back, squeezing my hand. The mayor walked by us and handed us each a note card and a pen. Okay ladies, write down your name, your age, city you live in, and your parents' name. Give them back to me and I'll read it off when I introduce you. We all took the note cards and wrote our names on it. After I got done writing my info on the card, I looked over to the little girl who was having problems writing the city that she lived in. I got onto my knees in front of her and asked if she needed help with her card. She shyly nodded and handed the card over to me. On her card I could see her name was Jessica Collins and she was 7 years old. Where are you from? I whispered so only her, and I could hear. Saint Louis? She whispered back quietly. I quickly wrote it down on the note card. What's your mom and dad's name? I asked. I only got a dad. She said sadly, his name is Richard. I wrote down Richard Collins and gave her back the card. Jessica took it and walked it over to the mayor, who added it with the other cards. Thanks! Jessica whispered while heading back to her spot. I nodded my head and stood up straight. I scanned the crowd and found Mom and Dad sitting in the back row. They had their video camera focused on me as they waited for the mayor to start the contest. Butterflies grew in me as I tried to focus on what I had to do. Chapter 19, Easter Princess. Relax, that's what I told myself when the mayor started the contest. Inside, I was freaking out. What was I supposed to do? I never had stage fright before in my life, and now all I could do was focus on the faces of everyone in the crowd. The mayor talked for a few minutes about what it means to be a princess. He talked about kindness, respect, and above all, maturity. I used this time to take several deep breaths to calm my nerves. There are 3 parts to the Easter Prince and Princess contest. First part is the introductions of the contestants. Then a question and answer phase where we had just a few minutes to impress the judges by answering a simple question that the mayor gives to us, and then the big reveal on who this year's Easter Princess is. Finally, the mayor ended his speech and turned to us to introduce us. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you this year's Easter Princess contestants. The crowd clapped and I could hear my dad yell out Amanda's name while cheering. First, we got Jessica Collins. She is 7 years old, she lives in the great city of St. Louis, Missouri, and she is the daughter of Richard Collins. Jessica stepped forward and did a little curtsy and stepped back. In the middle of the crowd a man yelled out, "Go Jessica!" Jessica's cheeks turned red with embarrassment. I could only guess that the man was Jessica's dad. The mayor then stopped in front of Brittany. Next is Brittany Smith. She just turned 10 years old yesterday. She lives in Grantville just south of here, and she is the daughter of Abby Smith. Again, the crowd cheered, and Brittany walked forward and did her little curtsy. Just as Jessica's dad did, Brittany's mom stood up and yelled, "Go Brittany!" The mayor got to me and flipped the card over to my information. Next is Amanda Trenton. She is 10 years old, from Indianapolis, Indiana, and the daughter of Kevin and Nicole Trenton. The crowd clapped, and this time my mom and dad both stood up and cheered my name. I stepped forward and did a small curtsy. I quietly thanked myself for listening to Rebecca as she taught me to do that last night. Next, we have Emily Jacobs. Emily is from here, she is 8 years old, and is the daughter of Emma and Bridget Jacobs. The crowd again clapped and Emily's two moms stood up and cheered. Emily did her curtsy and waved to the audience. Finally, we have Rhea Galloway. She is 10 years old, she is also from here, and she is the daughter of Matthew and Trinity Galloway. The crowd cheered, but her parents didn't do anything extra. Almost like her parents weren't there. Rhea stepped forward and waved, not even bothering to do a curtsy. She looked over to Brittany and smirked as she stepped back. The mayor then walked back over to Jessica. I could tell Jessica was nervous when she saw the mayor walking over to her. "You got this!" I heard Brittany whisper to her. Jessica gave Brittany an uneasy smile and a small nod. The mayor bent down to be Brittany's height. "So, Brittany, can you tell the audience here what your favorite color is?" The mayor pointed the mic at Brittany, who shyly said a faint "Purple." "And why is purple your favorite color?" the mayor asked. "Because it's pretty," Brittany said, smiling a little. The crowd laughed at her response, which made her laugh a little too. "So, Brittany, what do you like doing for fun?" "Play with my dog," she said a little easier. "Oh, and what's your dog's name?" "Peanut." "And what type of dog is Peanut?" "A big one." The crowd laughed. "Alright," the mayor said, chuckling. "Let's give a big round of applause to Jessica Collins." The crowd clapped and Jessica did a little curtsy and wake. The mayor went over to Brittany and bent down to her level. Brittany put her hands behind her back and smiled at the crowd down below. "So, Brittany, yesterday was your birthday? What did you do?" "We stayed at a hotel and had a swim party at the pool." "And what was your favorite gift?" "A karaoke machine." "And what did you sing first with your karaoke machine?" "Let It Go," Brittany said. "Can you sing it for us?" The mayor motioned for the crowd to start cheering. Brittany sighed a little and took the mic from the mayor and sang the chorus of Let It Go. The crowd clapped. "That Brittany Smith, everyone!" the mayor said once Brittany gave him back the microphone. The crowd cheered and Brittany was all smiles. The mayor then came over to me. I sucked in a deep breath as I thought about what I was going to say. Last time I was on the stage, I was asked which baseball team I liked the most, and then spent the next few minutes trying to explain why I like the Chicago Cubs more than the St. Louis Cardinals. Apparently when you are in Missouri you better cheer on the Cardinals. "So, Amanda, you are from Indiana? Must have been a long trip to get over to our small town." "It was," I squeaked out. I was more nervous than I had expected to be. "So, what's the best thing about Indianapolis?" I wanted to say the Colts, but what came out was unintelligible squeak. I looked over to my parents and then to the mic. I was panicking. I thought about running off the stage. This wasn't part of my punishment. My punishment was that I must be dressed as a girl for all Easter break. Then I felt Brittany take my hand. I looked over to her and she smiled and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll be here." I sucked in a deep breath. "The Indianapolis Colts," I whispered. "The best team in the world." The crowd booed a little, but the mayor calmed them down a little. "So, you like the Colts? Who is your favorite player?" "Matt Ryan, he's the quarterback." "And do you play any sports, Amada?" "I play football," I said, forgetting that I needed to pick a sport that girls played. "Oh, is it a girls' team or both boys and girls?" "Mostly all boys," I replied. "Well, we need more girls to play football." "Good for you." Then he turned to the crowd. "That's Amanda Trenton, ladies and gentlemen." The crowd clapped and I waved a little, still getting over the fact that I was that scared. The mayor walked over to Emily, who was smiling at the crowd. I almost had to bet that her and Rhea had rehearsed their questions over and over before coming here. "So, Emily, what do you do for fun?" the mayor asked. Emily took a second to think about it. "I do ballet," Emily replied. "And how long have you been doing ballet for?" Since I was 5. Emily replied, one of Emily's moms, and stood up and yelled, since you were 4. Oh yeah, since I was 4. Emily said, her cheeks a little red from embarrassment. Can you show us some of your ballet moves? The mayor asked while motioning the crowd to cheer for her. Yes, she said before walking over to center stage and performing what I guess is a ballet move. Brittany leaned over close to me and whispered, I'm in ballet too. That's basic stuff. I didn't say anything in reply. I figured Emily was downplaying her abilities to make Rhea look better. Very nice, the mayor said once she was done. That's Emily Jacobs, everyone. The crowd waved and Rhea gave a small curtsy to the crowd. The mayor then went over to Rhea. Rhea looked at us and smirked a little as she stepped forward. I knew that she had been practicing for this for a while. How are you doing, Mr. Mayor? Rhea asked. I'm doing well, thanks for asking. The mayor replied. I kicked myself in the butt for not thinking about asking the mayor how he was. This made Rhea look extremely likable. So, Rhea, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a doctor just like my mom. Rhea said, it's so rewarding to know that she helps save lives every day. That is a good choice. In the meantime, what do you do for fun? Swimming, she replied. I'm on the girls' dive and swim team at my school. She looked over at me. I knew that she clarified that she was on the girls' team to make the fact that I said that I was a girl on a boys' team sound ridiculous. Well, that sounds wonderful, the mayor said, then he turned to the crowd. Give it up for Rhea. Rhea stepped forward and did a curtsy as she waved to the crowd. Thank you all, she said before going back to the line of girls. Dang, she's good, Amanda whispered. I nodded in agreement. There was no way my pathetic performance could have topped Rhea's. She had this contest in the bag. I know for a fact that I lost. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give the judges a minute to go over the score. He pointed over to the judges who were talking to themselves. Just as a reminder, the Easter King and Queen contest will be next, so be sure to stick around and support them. That was great! Brittany whispered chipperly in my ear. I hope I get it. Me too, I said back. Brittany was now the only hope to beating Rhea. Princess Brittany! Can you imagine? Brittany said. I can't wait until I get to have my picture taken with Seth and everything. I swear if this was a cartoon she would have fluttered up to the ceiling. The mayor got back on stage and the 5 of us straightened up as the mayor took out a white envelope that contained the results. I now have the results from the judges, the mayor said. He took out a piece of paper that was marked runner-up. The runner-up is... The mayor stopped for a second to give a dramatic pause. My heart thumped as I sat on pins and needles of who this might be. The suspense was starting to kill me. Please don't be Rhea, I said to myself. Please don't be Rhea. The runner-up is Brittany Smith. I looked over to Brittany expecting her to be disappointed, but instead I saw her jump up and down and run over to the mayor and give him a big hug before taking the sash and the gift card for $50. I was both happy for her and disappointed. Now there was no one to beat Rhea. Rhea was clearly better than Emily, Jessica, or me. I had to face the facts and watch Rhea win. Now for this year's Easter Princess, the mayor said, interrupting my thoughts. I agreed to myself that if Rhea won, I would at least look happy for her. I mean, what did I care? Next year I will be back as a boy again. This was just a stupid contest. I mean, what was I going to do? Stand in front of Mrs. Yokeman's class and tell everyone that I was Easter Princess at an Easter fair that they never heard of? This year's Easter Princess is... I held my breath hoping that it would at least be Jessica. She deserved it more than I did. I looked over to Rhea, who had already stepped forward to accept her tiara and sash. I honestly didn't hear the mayor say a name. I just heard him not say Jessica's name. I looked over to Rhea expecting her to have won. But she just looked at me and snarled. She and Emily both looked mad. Then I felt Brittany hug me from behind. What are you doing? She asked. You won. You are the Easter Princess. I looked at her with shock as I took a wobbly step forward to accept the sash, and the $100 gift card. A girl about a year older than me wearing a light blue dress and a sash that said Easter Princess with the previous year imprinted on it then came up to me and put a tiara on my head. The crowd clapped as I stood there in a fog. I didn't expect to win. In fact, I don't know how I won. I did everything wrong. You got to be kidding me! Rhea hissed loudly. I looked behind me at Rhea. So did everyone else? Seriously, she gets to be Easter Princess? Chapter 20 A Real Princess. You got to be kidding me! Rhea hissed loudly. I looked behind me at Rhea. So did everyone else? Seriously, she gets to be Easter Princess? Rhea stomped up to the front of the stage where I was. That's who the judges picked, the mayor said, showing her the card. In the middle of the note card in handwritten letters said Amanda on it. Why? What makes her so much better than I am? I am the prettiest here. I'm the richest, most popular, and I know all of you have been to my mother's clinic. Rhea pointed over to the judges. One of them, a middle-aged man, stood up. You want to know why you didn't get Easter Princess this year? The man asked. This isn't a beauty contest, nor is it a popularity contest. Do you want to know what set Brittany and Amanda apart? I looked over to Rhea, who stood there motionless. I could tell that she wasn't used to anyone telling her off like this. Before the contest we saw Amanda help Jessica with her card. During the contest we saw Brittany encouraging Amanda after she froze. We look at actions done in this contest: kindness, consideration, and selflessness. This is something these two girls have done. I smiled a little. I didn't know that anyone had seen me helping Jessica out. Rhea turned around and stomped off the stage. Her hands were balled up in fists as she walked by me. Just wait until I find dirt on you, tomboy! If I can't win Easter Princess, then I can blackmail you into giving me the title! She hissed to me so low only her and I could hear. I felt threatened for a second until Emily came behind me. Sorry about Rhea, she said, holding out her hand. I was hoping you would win. Someone needed to teach her a lesson. You did great, Princess! Thank you, I said, shaking her hand. It kind of surprised me that Rhea's friend would come up to me and congratulate me. Brittany grabbed me out of my thoughts and guided me off the stage into a set of empty bleachers. It's time to get you pictures taken. You lucky you get to have your picture taken with Seth. I followed her lead and then got up onto the bleachers. Mom came up and made a few adjustments to me and then helped me find a good pose to sit in. I then was blinded by 10 of cameras going off. So how much longer until I can ride the rides? I asked Mom when it was time for Seth to join me on the bleachers. You will have to wait for the Easter King and Queen contest to be over, Mom said. And then you will have to get changed. I nodded my head as Seth sat down next to me. He didn't say anything. Like me 2 years ago, he seemed a little uncomfortable getting his photo taken and getting all this attention. I looked over to Brittany, who was watching me with envy. I didn't know if she was envy over that fact that I got Easter Princess or the face that I am over here sitting with her crush. Once I was finally allowed to leave bleachers, I went over to Brittany and this time I was the one to hug her. Thank you for your help, I whispered in her ear. You're welcome, she replied, hugging me tighter. Since being on this punishment, this is the happiest moment of the punishment. This is the happiest moment of my life. It didn't matter that I was wearing a dress, or that I had just won a very girly contest. But that I had made a new best friend that would next dare me to do something stupid. So, I got a surprise for you two girls, Mom said, interrupting Brittany and I. Tonight, you, Brittany, Ethan, and Rebecca are going to the cabin to spend the night. That way you can play in the creek and hang out with your cousins. Both Brittany and I looked at each other and squealed with excitement. But little did I know my happiness was soon going to be destroyed. Chapter 21 The Carnival. It took another 2 hours of watching the Easter King and Queen contest and taking pictures with the King and Queen that I was finally allowed to go back to the backstage office to change. Once I got in there, I saw that Mom had already had a change of clothes picked out for me. Next to it was my school's book bag. I opened it up to see Mom had put my clothes to wear at the cabin inside. After getting Brittany's help unzipping the dress, I pulled it up and over my head and pulled off the tights, just leaving me wearing the pair of panties. I quickly grabbed the pair of purple shorts that Mom had set out for me and slid them on. Next, I put on a black spaghetti strap tank top. I then undid the straps to a pair of black sandals and put them onto my feet, making sure that the strap that goes over my foot was on correctly. I looked at the girl in the mirror. She was still smiling that she had beat Rhea and had gotten Easter Princess. She was happier than I was when I had won Easter Prince 2 years ago. Brittany knocked me out of my thoughts as she knocked on the door for me to hurry up. "Coming!" I yelled as I finished looking myself over in the mirror one last time. I opened the door just in time to see Brittany putting her long hair into a ponytail. She is wearing blue jean shorts and a pink t-shirt with a ballerina on it. "So, are you ready to ride the rides?" Brittany asked as soon as she saw me. "Your dad says we have 2 hours to be on them before your cousin takes us up to their cabin." "I'm ready," I said, closing the door. "I just need to put this in a safe spot." I held up my book bag and put it under a small desk, hoping that would be enough that no one would steal it. "Let's go," I said, running out of the trailer with Brittany following me. I ran down the stairs and all the way to where the rides were operating. Because I am the princess and Brittany is the runner-up, both her and I got free passes to ride the rides and priority line jumping. Both of us ran to the Comet Plunge, a spaceship-themed ride that had passengers spinning around in the air. "Are you sure you're up to this?" I asked Brittany. Brittany just looked at me and smiled. "Please, I went to Six Flags and rode bigger rides this. I nodded, not wanting to tell her that I was kind of scared to be riding on this ride. Brittany and I showed off our badges to the carny and we both boarded one of the rocket-shaped cars. "You're scared, aren't you?" Brittany asked. "I am not," I replied just as the carny put the shoulder harness over me, trapping me into the ride's cars. "I can see the fear in your face," Brittany said, pointing to my face. "I can't wait to hear you scream like a girl." "I will not," I said. I meant to say more, but at that moment the carny started the ride, rocketing the car forward. I let out a small girlish scream as I slowly got pushed back in my seat. Brittany laughed as she watched me scream while holding on to the restraints for dear life. The ride finally stopped, and it took me way too long to let go of the restraints. I looked over to Brittany, who already had the restraints lifted and was already getting off the ride. "You can let go now," she whispered to me. I slowly lifted the restraints, my heart was pounding as I slowly got off the ride. "You screamed like a little girl the whole time," Brittany said, laughing. "I did not," I said, even though yes, I did scream the whole time the ride was operating. "Come on, I bet you won't scream on the merry-go-round." Brittany and I left the ride hand in hand as she pulled me through the crowd. We were almost to the merry-go-round when we were stopped by Rhea. Rhea stood with her arms crossed, blocking the way for both of us. Behind her Emily stood looking sad, almost like she didn't want to be here with her. "So, tomboy! I'm so glad I found you!" Rhea said, "Let's talk." "I'm not giving you Easter Princess," I said, crossing my arms. "Oh, well, I know something that I bet this little one doesn't," Rhea said, pointing over to Brittany. "Rhea, don't!" Emily said, taking Rhea's shoulder. "You can still get it next year." "Nope, this is my year." "So, what is it going to be, tomboy? Hand me over the tiara and the sash or else." I looked behind me to Brittany, with a questionable look. She just shrugged. Rhea had to be bluffing. There was no way that Rhea could know who I really was. "You're not taking Easter Princess away from me," I replied, putting my arms across my chest. Rhea smiled a little before fishing something out of her pocket. "Fine, have it your way, Adam." I felt my blood run cold as she said my name. I froze as I thought about what to say. "That is, you right, Adam? Let's see here." She flipped a card over to show me my own school ID, the one that was in my book bag that I had left backstage. "Adam Trinan, 4th grader at Little Ridge Elementary School. You know, the picture on this ID looks almost just like you. Almost like you are Adam. Almost like you are really a boy." Behind Rhea, Emily stepped back in shame. I was completely frozen, and I couldn't even guess what Brittany was thinking. "I'll take the silence that I got you. Do you want everyone to know that you're a boy wearing girls' clothes? Pretending to be a girl? Tell you what, I will give you a trade if you give me Easter Princess, I will give you back your ID." I was about ready to take her trade. There was no way I wanted anyone else to know that I am really Adam. I probably just lost Brittany as a friend. I can only imagine what other people will think about me if they found out the truth. I about said deal to Rhea, but then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around to find Brittany pulling me back and stepping forward. "Go ahead, tell," she said, getting in front of me. "I don't care if Amanda is really Adam or whoever. They're my friend. I'll stand with her or him." "I will too," Emily said, walking over to my side. They both took one of my hands in theirs. Rhea looked at them both now, just as panicked as I had been. "This isn't over?" Rhea said, throwing my school ID on the ground and turning around, marching off back into the crowd. "I'll make sure she doesn't do anything," Emily said. "She's a pain when she doesn't get what she wants." Emily walked away, leaving both Brittany and I alone. Brittany bent down and picked up my ID. She looked at it for a second. "So, you're Adam?" she asked, sitting at a picnic table. I followed her and sat across from her. "Yes," I replied. "I bet there is a good story to be told." I nodded and began telling her about what had happened on Thursday. Chapter 22: The Cabin by the River. After an hour of riding the carnival rides, Rebecca finally found us and told Brittany and I that it was time to start heading to the cabin. I looked over at Brittany. "Are you sure you still want to come with us now that you know my secret?" I asked. Brittany stopped for a second and smiled. "The only thing you have to worry about is whether or not I'll beat you to the car," Brittany said as she started to run. I smiled and began to run myself. Both Brittany and I ran over to Rebecca's Jeep, where Ethan was already waiting for us. I got the door first and opened the door and got inside. "First!" I screamed loudly. "No fair!" Brittany said, getting in on the other side of the Jeep. Both of us giggled as we quickly closed the doors. Ethan, who was in the front seat, looked at us and rolled his eyes. "You two girls are weird," he said, looking back at us. "Yeah, looks like Amanda found her girly side," Brittany teased, rubbing my head. "Wait, does she know?" Ethan asked me. "Of course, I now know," Brittany explained. "Rhea found out who I was and tried to blackmail me," I said for clarification. "It's no big deal." "You should have told me," Ethan said, "I would have taught her a lesson." "Don't worry, I stood up for her," Brittany said cheerfully. Rebecca got into the driver's side of the Jeep and started it up. Ethan looked at me for a long second, probably tried to see if I wasn't okay. "Next time get me," he whispered. Rebecca started out of the parking lot and drove down the blacktop road that was lined with cornfields being ready for this year's harvest. I watched out the window. Everything here was calmer than they are in Indianapolis. Things are a lot slower, almost a little better. Here I didn't have to prove that I was the best by being mean to a girl. Instead, here I could prove that I was the best by my kind actions. The cabin that Rebecca is taking us to used to be my great-grandfather's home. He had built it himself after coming to America from England. The cabin is 2 floors, the bottom floor is where the kitchen and the living area is, and the top floor is where the 3 bedrooms are. A large porch wrapped around 2 sides of the cabin that overlooked the river. "This is amazing," Brittany said, looking out the window. "I know," I agreed. Rebecca parked the Jeep in front of one of the storage barns and we all got out. I put my book bag on and began walking to the cabin. "So, I'm taking the master bedroom. Ethan, you will get the bedroom on the left of my bedroom, and girls, you will get the bedroom on the right." Brittany looked over at me and smiled. "We're going to be roomies," Brittany cheered. "Get settled," Rebecca continued, "put on your swimming clothes and let's meet here in a half hour. While you all go swimming, I will get the fire started." "Okay, Ethan, Brittany," and I said at once as we ran up the stairs to the porch and ran into the cabin. We ran upstairs and Brittany and I went into our room. I pulled off my book bag and quickly looked inside for the girls' one-piece swimsuit that I wore the other day at the hotel. But then I froze. It wasn't in there. I dumped out all the clothes that was inside and still there was no swimsuit. "No!" I said. My heart dropped as I realized that this meant I wouldn't be able to go swimming in the river. "What?" Brittany asked, looking over my shoulder. She already had her one-piece swimsuit in her hand. "My parents forgot to pack my swimsuit," I said, defeated. "Oh no!" She whispered. Now what? I don't know, I said, sighing a little. Usually if I forget my swim trunk I would just swim in my shorts. But I can't with these, they aren't mine. I looked around the room defeated, but stopped when I saw a small plastic bag sitting on one of the end tables. I got up from the bed and picked up the bag. On it there was a note card that said Amanda in big words. I opened the bag cautiously and looked inside. What is this? I asked, pulling out one of the contents of the bag. It's a bikini top. Brittany said, her eyes widened as she grabbed the bag from me and pulled out the bikini bottoms that were also in the bag. It's your very first bikini. Bethany cheered. The bikini has pink and blue tie-dye that has cross-back spaghetti straps. No. I said, no, 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 no. I can't wear a bikini, that's just too weird. No, it's not. Brittany said. Go and try it on. It's too... I began to say, but Brittany stopped me. If you're going to say it's too girly, may I remind you that you did compete in the Easter Princess contest wearing a fluffy pink dress. She did have me there. I sighed and got up from the bed. Where are you going? Amanda asked. To the bathroom to change. I said I didn't have much of a choice. If I wanted to go swimming, then I must suck up my hesitations and just get over the fact that I was going to wear a bikini. I put on the bikini and looked at myself in the mirror. The girl in the mirror looked like most of the girls I would see at the community pool at home. But I couldn't help but still feel awkward about wearing it. In my head I had to give myself a pep talk to finally leave the bathroom and show Brittany. I opened the door to my room where Brittany was finishing up getting changed. Are you ready? I asked. Ready, she said, coming around to the bed. I must admit I am a little jealous you get to wear a bikini and I don't. I'll trade you, I said, grabbing the straps of the bikini top. Nope, that's your bikini. Besides, one-piece swimsuits have their advantages too. Brittany and I ran outside just as Ethan and Rebecca started the fire in the fire pit. Girls, just remember we eat in an hour. Rebecca called out. Okay. Brittany and I screamed before we jumped into the river. Chapter 23, Campfire. I put a pink and purple beach towel over one of the logs that surrounded the campfire that Rebecca and Ethan created. We had just got done eating hot dogs roasted by the fire, and after going back to the river to play for a little bit longer, both Brittany and I were back to start making s'mores. I was still wearing the bikini. It was weird, but it was a little bit better than the one-piece swimsuit I had worn at the hotel. After my initial worries that I was going to lose my top, I felt better about swimming. It got to the point where I asked myself why I have ever felt comfortable wearing swim trunks shirtless before. Before I ate, I had put on the pair of shorts I had worn down to the cabin over the bikini bottoms, but I kept the bikini top on. Brittany still had on her one-piece swimsuit with a pair of shorts on top too. Brittany sat next to me and handed me a marshmallow. I took it and put it on the same stick that I had cooked the hot dog on an hour ago. I stuck the stick under the fire and watched as it turned from snow white to a light brown and then to a black as it caught on fire. I brought it to me and blew it out as Rebecca handed me a graham cracker and 2 pieces of chocolate. This is probably the most peaceful I have ever been. Once we got done with s'mores and Ethan told us campfire ghost stories, Rebecca herded us back to the cabin. I followed Brittany upstairs and into our room. I grabbed my bag and headed to the bathroom so Brittany could change in our room. In the book bag I found a pair of pink sleep pants and matching spaghetti strap top. Apparently winning Easter Princess and agreeing to wear a pink and purple bikini wasn't enough to warrant me wearing boys' pajamas. I looked in the mirror to find the girl in her pajamas ready for bed. I left the bathroom and found the door to the room was already open, with Brittany already wearing her light blue nightgown pajamas. She sat in front of an old vanity and looked at herself in the mirror as she brushed her hair. Not wanting to disturb her, I jumped onto the bed and got my side ready. So, tomorrow is your last day of punishment? Brittany asked. Yeah, I answered back. It's weird, on Thursday I didn't think tomorrow would ever happen, and now today I don't want it to end. You could stay as Amanda, Brittany suggested. Nah, I need to be Adam, I said, staring up at the ceiling. It was fun being Amanda, but she's not who I am. I am Adam. Too bad, she said, setting down her brush. "I was going to invite you to my birthday party next year." "I'll still come," I said as I got comfortable. "As Amanda?" Brittany asked, hopeful. I wanted to tell her no, but I looked over to her and saw the hope in her light up. "Maybe," I said, shrugging. Brittany came over to me and jumped on the bed, barely missing me. Almost too excited to control herself as she told me what she had planned for her birthday party next year. She told me how she wanted another swim party / sleepover again, how she couldn't wait to introduce me to all her friends, and how cool it will be to both wear bikinis. She was so happy I didn't want to tell her that as soon as Mom and Dad let me wear boy clothes again, I will never ever wear girls' clothes. My time as Amanda was coming to an end. Just one more day. "We need to get some sleep," I said once she was done telling me about her plans for next year's birthday party. Brittany agreed and got under the covers next to me and rested her head on her pillow. I turned off the bedside light but didn't fall asleep. "Amanda?" she whispered. "What?" I asked. "You know you're my best friend, right?" she asked. "You're my best friend too," I said, whispering. "Good night." "Good night, bestie," she said, smiling. Chapter 24: The Choice. I woke up as the sun's rays started to come through the window. Brittany was still asleep next to me. I slowly moved out of the bed and slowly walked to the door, opening it slowly so it wouldn't wake her. I walked down the hall and down the stairs where I found Rebecca in the kitchen. "You're up early?" Rebecca said as she started scrabbling eggs. "The sun woke me up," I explained. "I see," Rebecca said while she cooked. "I went ahead and set out your clothes for you on the dresser in your room. How about you go upstairs, change, wake Brittany up, and you two can have breakfast." "My clothes are already in my book bag," I said, confused. "Your mom came by and dropped off a different set," Rebecca explained. "She said what you had in your bag wasn't girly enough." "Figures," I said before turning around and heading back to the room. I walked upstairs and slowly opened the door, careful not to wake up Brittany. But I didn't need to worry. As soon as I got inside, a pillow thrown at my head. I smiled and threw the pillow back at Brittany. We both laughed as we threw pillows at each other and had a small impromptu pillow fight. "Rebecca is cooking breakfast, I'm just here to get changed," I said once we were done with our little pillow fight. "Cool," Brittany said before picking up her bag. "I'll take the bathroom, you can change in here." Once Brittany left, I waked over the dresser where Rebecca said the clothes I needed were. Once there were two sets of clothes next to each other. One was a purple cap sleeve dress with white tights and black Mary Jane dress shoes. The other was a pair of my blue jeans, a black Harley Davidson t-shirt. My tennis shoes were on top of the pile. In the middle of the two outfits was a note. I picked it up, not believing what it could say. "Adam, you did such a good job this past week with your punishment. Your dad and I have decided to let you off your punishment a little early. Today we are giving you the choice, boy clothes or girl clothes. Love. Mom." "This is it," I said, whispered so I could only hear myself. "This is my punishment is finally over." I took the boys' clothes, they were familiar to me. But then I stopped. I looked over to the girl clothes. My boy clothes were familiar, but the dress looked so inviting, and since the weather was getting too warm, it's almost a short season, the dress did seem more ideal for the long car ride back. Plus, I liked the open feeling of the dress and the sway of the bottom around my legs. So, should I just wear the dress? What should I do? "Amanda?" I heard Brittany say behind me. I looked behind me. Brittany was already dressed, wearing a pink t-shirt with the silhouette of a ballerina on the front of it and a denim skirt. "Are you okay?" Brittany asked, walking over to me. I handed her the note and she quietly read it. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. "Are you wearing boy clothes or girl clothes?" "I don't know," I admitted. "What do you think?" "It's not up to me," Brittany said. "Either way, you're still my friend." Mom and Dad picked Brittany and I up from the cabin 2 hours after breakfast. We were finally heading back to Indianapolis, and on the way we're dropping Brittany off at her house. I watched as the dusty gravel road soon gave way to the blacktop county road and then finally to the highway. As soon as we hit the highway, I looked away from the window and down to my legs. I pulled at the tights as I smiled a little. It had only taken another minute of thinking before I decided to just wear the dress and be Amanda just for one more day. Brittany took my hand and smiled. "I'm going to miss you, I can't wait to see you next year," she whispered. "Same," I said. Dad pulled up the car to her house and she got her stuff gathered up. "Thanks for the great time, Amanda," she said before whispering. "I hope you're Amanda next year too. But if not, I can't wait to re-meet you as Adam." She leaned into me and gave me a small hug. "Bye," I whispered, wishing that she didn't have to go, wishing that she didn't live so far away, and hoping that next year would come faster. "Bye," she repeated before turning around and running back to her house. I watched as she ran up her front porch and into the house as Dad pulled away. "Next stop home," Dad said. But I didn't react, instead I just looked down at the white tights that were covering me legs. I know that this will be the last time that I wear them or any other girly clothes. I was relieved by this but also still a little sad. Chapter 25 Home. Going through the main streets of the Indianapolis suburb that I live in, I couldn't help but feel a little scared. Everything around me was the same, but I wasn't. I left here scared that everyone would see me wearing girls' clothes, and now I returned just a little less scared of everyone seeing me wearing them. Dad stopped the car in front of our house. Just like before, he didn't put it into the garage. Instead, he instructed me to be the middleman, carrying things from the trunk of the car to the house repeatedly. I did what he told me. He would hand me a suitcase from the car's trunk, and I would take it to the front door to where Mom was waiting to take it inside. On one of the trips, I spotted the same mother and daughter that I had seen back on Friday. This time I didn't hurry to the car to hide from them. I walked like normal, and when they passed by the car, I said a small hello. "Hi!" the girl said shyly back. The mother just smiled a little and the two kept on walking, still not knowing that the girl they just said hi to was really a boy. I was surprised that Mom and Dad didn't make me get out of the dress and girly clothes once we were done unloading the car. Instead, they didn't seem to notice and just kept with their normal routine. "I'm going to order some pizza for dinner," Dad said. He had his cell phone in his hand. "What pizza do you want, Amanda?" "Sausage and pepperoni," I replied as Dad typed it into his phone. "Can I come with you?" I asked, but Dad shook his head no. "You're staying here and helping your mother unpack, okay?" Dad said. "Okay," I replied as I went back to the living room where Mom had all our stuff out so she could sort through them. Dad watched me for a second and then turned around, grabbed his keys from the key holder and walked out of the house and over to his car. I carefully sat down next to Mom while keeping the dress around me. She handed me the pink suitcase that has had all the girly stuff that was borrowed from Gracie. "Help me go through this," she said. "I'll tell you if it's Gracie's or if it goes to the thrift store. Just make a pile and then you will take them to the laundry room and wash them," she said. "Yes, ma'am," I said, taking the bag and dumping out the contents onto the floor. All the girly items fell out of it. The last to get out of the suitcase was my pair of pants and my Harley Davidson t-shirt. I looked at it for a second, knowing that if I had made a different decision this morning, then I would be wearing this instead of the dress I was now wearing. "Just put that in the thrift store pile for now," Mom said. "Once we wash it, we can take it out and put it in your room." I nodded my head and put it on the floor on the left side of me. Next was a black dress that I had worn on the first day of the punishment. "Gracie's," Mom said almost instantly. I looked at it for a second and put it on the right side of me. I didn't want to make Mom wonder why I was looking at the dress for too long. We went through the clothes one at a time for the next half an hour. It amazed me how much stuff Gracie had donated to make me a girl just for one long weekend. At the end, the pile going to the thrift store was way smaller than the pile going back to Gracie's house. The only thing that I didn't see was the bikini that Rebecca gave me yesterday, the dress that I had worn at Easter Princess, and all the girly panties were gone also. "Good, it's all sorted," Mom said, getting up and grabbing Gracie's clothes. I stood up with her and took the clothes from her. "Take these to the washer," Mom said. "We don't give back clothes that we borrowed dirty, right, young lady?" "Right," I said, even though I didn't want to borrow them in the first place. As I put the pile of clothes into the washing machine, Dad came home with the pizza. Mom greeted him and they both went into the kitchen where I couldn't hear them. I quickly poured laundry soap into the washing machine and started it. As soon as I heard the hissing of the water start pouring, I quickly went back to the living room where I heard Mom and Dad talking. "So, everything is ready for tomorrow?" Mom asked in a hushed voice, more than likely trying to keep me from overhearing them. "Yup," Dad said. "Everything is ready for Adam in the morning." "Good," Mom said before stepping out of the kitchen and yelling for me to come and eat. I waited for a second. What in the world was waiting for me in the morning? Whatever it was couldn't be too bad, right? I mean, Dad did call me Adam and not Amanda. After dinner I went back to the laundry room and switched out the laundry, placing Gracie's clothes into the dryer and the clothes going to the thrift store into the washer. Mom knocked on the door behind me and handed me the pink dress that I had worn for Easter Princess. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked, taking the dress from her. "It's your dress," Mom said, "go put it in your closet." "But Mom," I whined. "But nothing, Adam," Mom said, stopping me. "It will be in your closet, serving as a reminder to you of the punishment you had this weekend. And if you're being bad, we might bring it out again and make you wear it as more of a punishment. Are we clear?" I looked at the dress and gulped. "Yes," I said. I turned around to my room and opened my closet. Inside were all my boys' t-shirts, button-up dress shirts and school uniforms with the polos on the hanger over a pair of slacks. I put the dress on the very end of the rack where, unless someone was looking for it, they wouldn't know that it was in there. The pink girly dress looked very out of place next to the muted colors of my shirts. I tried to think about what a girl my age's closet would look like. There would be more bright, playful colors with pinks and purples. Dresses and tops of all types would line the closet. Then I thought about Brittany. She was a girl. Having dresses in her closet was probably normal for her. Mom walked into my room and handed me the 2 pairs of heeled shoes. I took them, looking at her questionably. "These go on your shoe shelf," Mom said, handing them to me. Defeated, I took the shoes and placed them on the bottom shelf of my shoe shelf. Once the dryer was done, I took Gracie's clothes out of the dryer and into a laundry basket. Then I put the thrift store clothes into the dryer. On Mom's orders, I took the clothes basket to the living room and sat on the couch. "Now fold them," Mom ordered. "We don't bring back clothes that we borrowed unfolded." For the second time I wanted to remind Mom that I never wanted to borrow Gracie's clothes, but I kept quiet. Instead, I picked up a dress and folded it the best that I could. I repeated the steps until all the clothes were folded. "Good," Mom said, taking the laundry basket. She grabbed a cardboard box and had me transfer the clothes into it. "Now, go get ready for bed," Mom said. "I will take care of the remaining clothes." "Okay," I said, happy to finally be allowed to go back to my room. "And those Mary Janes need to go by your heels on your shoe shelf," Mom yelled as I ran up to my room. I walked into my room and took off the Mary Janes and set them by the heels of the bottom shelf, giving myself a reminder to hide them if my friends come over. I grabbed my boy pajamas out of my dresser. This was the first boy clothes that I have worn since Thursday. I took off the dress and tights and put them in my dirty clothes hamper with no idea where Mom wanted them. I don't recall if I had forgotten to take off the girly panties or if I somehow just wanted to keep them on, but the fact is that under my boy pajamas were girly panties. I put on my pajamas, feeling weird about wearing my clothes now. My black Batman pajama pants with little Batman logos seemed to contradict the pink pajamas that I had worn last night. Mom came into my room and tucked me into bed. I was tired and I couldn't wait to go to sleep. Tomorrow I was going to be a boy again and I couldn't wait. "Good night, Adam," Mom said, looking back at me. "Good night, Mom," I said with a yawn. Chapter 26, Gracie's Choice. Dad woke me up before the sun came up. He turned on my room's lights as I slowly came back from whatever dream I had been having. I blinked as a blurry image of my father came into focus. "Get ready for school, Adam," he said sternly. "I'll be taking you." This instantly raised some red flags. Dad didn't normally take me to school. I have always taken the bus to Little Ridge Elementary. I got up and grabbed my uniform out of the closet, but none of them were there. Instead, the girl's black school uniform jumper was there on its hanger. The girly polo was hung next to it, and on my dresser sat a pair of white knee socks and a pair of pink panties neatly folded up. I grabbed the uniform from my bed and walked back into the hallway and into my parents' room. They both looked at me as I raised the uniform up. "What's this?" I asked. "Just put it on," Mom said. "But I thought I was done with my punishment," I said, defeated. I tried to think of how and if I did something wrong. "Just put it on," Dad said, repeating, "Mom, I will explain later." He pointed to the door, and I slowly left the room. I looked at the uniform, trying to imagine what the school day was going to look like with it on. What were my friends going to say? What were they going to do when they meet Amanda? I changed out of the blue panties that I fell asleep in yesterday, to the panties that were laid out next to the uniform. These were even more girly than the ones I had been wearing during the weekend. These had lace around the waistband and the leg holes. Upon looking closer, they were little hearts repeated around the lace trim. I put them on and put them to my waist. I then grabbed the girly red polo. I tried to imagine that the polo was a boy's one, but the puffed and ruffled sleeves and them made it obvious that this was 100% a girly polo. I put my arms through the sleeves and buttoned the 3 buttons around the neckline, ignoring the fact that the little buttons were shaped like flowers. After I put the polo on, I got the jumper and put it over my head, and let it fall to the top of my knees. It felt like every other dress I have worn this weekend, but it felt more weird, or maybe it was because this is the girl's uniform that I have seen every girl wear since I was in kindergarten, or maybe it's the fact that this is mostly likely what I am going to wear when I introduce everyone to Amanda. I put the white knee socks onto my feet, ignoring the fact that on the sides was little knitted hearts and, on the top, how they had a ruffle. I grabbed the Mary Jane shoes from my shoe shelf because I wasn't an idiot. I knew that Mom and Dad wasn't going to let me wear my normal boy shoes with a girl's uniform. I left my room and walked to the bathroom. I closed the door and looked in the mirror. The girl in the mirror looked like she was ready for school. She looked like nothing was out of the ordinary for her. Just jump on the school bus and enjoy a day at the school. Dad knocked on the bathroom door and I answered it. He looked me up and down approvingly. "Here," he said, handing me 2 Pop-Tart packages. "Eat these in the car, we got to get going." "Dad, I'm still not sure about this," I said. "What did I do wrong? Why am I dressed like a girl still?" "We'll talk about it in the car, let's go," Dad said, putting an arm on my shoulder and guiding me to the garage door. I followed his lead and got into his car. I sat in the front seat while Dad opened the garage door and sat in his seat. Dad started the car and backed slowly out of the driveway. I looked out my window as Dad put the car into drive and started to drive away. Dad turned on the radio and tuned it to a country music station and let it play on low volume. The radio played an old song that I didn't recognize and then went straight to "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," a song by Shania Twain. I laughed a little at the song choice that seemed to be comically linked to this form of punishment. "Adam," Dad said once the song ended, and a commercial started to play. "Do you remember why your punishment started in the first place?" "Because I cut Gracie's hair," I said, looking down. "And because you tormented other girls in your class," Dad said. "I know," I said, looking at him. "And I am sorry, really, I am. Can I please just go to school as a boy?" Dad didn't say anything for a whole commercial break. But eventually his hardened exterior broke and he looked at me. "It's not our punishment to release you on," he replied. I looked at him for a second and then the realization of the punishment came into focus. "It's Gracie's," I said slowly. Dad nodded. "We gave Gracie the choice. If you had been good for this weekend, she can either release you from your punishment, or if she feels that you haven't learned your lesson, then you will remain as a girl for the rest of the school year." My blood ran cold. Gracie, a girl, that I had cut her hair, and made her cry, will now be deciding whether I can be a boy at school again. "There's another part to your punishment that we will discuss after school," Dad said, "but right now your future rests on what Gracie says." "This isn't fair," I said, trying to hold back tears. "It wasn't fair for Gracie to have her hair chopped off either," Dad retorted. "Look, last night I talked to Gracie's parents while I was out grabbing pizza. They will talk to Gracie on your behalf, but just like she has no choice to have her hair shortened, you have no choice whether you wear a jumper or not the rest of the school year." I nodded, not letting Dad see me tear up as I thought about how my social life at school, my bad boy persona, the reputation that I made for myself, was now over. There was no way that Gracie would let me stay a boy. Dad pulled into the school's parking lot. It was still dark outside, and the illumination of the parking lot lights showed that there was no one at the school except for one other car, a red SUV, was parked near the entrance of the school. Dad parked his car in the staff parking lot and got out. I did the same, and we both walked to the back of the car to the trunk. Dad opened it and got out the cardboard box that I had put Gracie's clothes in the night before. Dad took the box out and handed it to me to carry. We walked to the doors of the school. I looked over to the SUV, and 3 figures emerged from it and slowly walked over to us. As they got closer, I could see the shortest figure was Gracie. Her now short brown hair laid just below her shoulders, a lot shorter than it was last time I saw her. Once Gracie saw me, she smiled a little bit. Clearly, she saw me dressed in the same uniform as her was funny. This was all her doing, and I could tell she was enjoying every moment of it. Behind her was her parents. The dad was bald and very muscular. He is wearing a blue t-shirt that has the sleeves cut off, this way everyone can see the tattoos all around his arms. One of the tattoos that caught my attention was the word Gracie on it, with what I presume is Gracie's birth date on it. Above Gracie's name is another girl's name. The name Jessica was written out with angel wings on either side. Below the name was her birth date, but unlike Gracie's name, there was a second date below the first one. The second date was just 4 months ago. I did the math in my head of the 2 years and found that they were only 16 years apart. Gracie's mom wore a business suit. She had on a pair of black slacks and a black dress jacket. She wore a white blouse and left a few buttons undone, showing off her cleavage. Her hair was long and wavy, just like Gracie's had been. Wordlessly, Dad opened the front doors of the school and let us all into the school. Dad led the way to the school's office, with me following behind everyone. Gracie's dad said something to Gracie, and she turned and looked behind her and saw that I was walking much slower than the group. She nodded to her dad and took a tablet from him. She stopped and waited for me to catch up. "Hi!" she whispered kind of shyly. I could tell that she didn't really want to be talking to me, that while I had been having fun at Aunt Georgia, she had been angry about the loss of her hair. "Hi," I said, unable to think of the proper words to say how sorry I am. Dad said it would be best if we talked alone while they talked in your dad's office. Gracie said she took my hand, and we walked past the office and into the dimly lit cafeteria. In the distance I could hear the cooks making breakfast and talking to themselves in the kitchen. If any of them saw Gracie and I, they would just see 2 girls sitting at a table talking. Gracie found the table that the girls in my class are assigned to during lunch and sat down. I followed her. "Look, Gracie!" I started, but Gracie stopped me. "Don't think saying sorry will make this all better," she said, putting the tablet that her dad had handed her on the table. "I'm sorry," I said, "more than you can ever imagine." "Do you know why I had long hair?" she asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "Look, I don't really care. Just please tell my dad that you forgive me so I can get out of this," I said, looking around. The longer that Gracie and I talk, the more nervous I am that someone will see me wearing this. "So, you're not interested in what I'm going to say?" Gracie asked. "I will listen to whatever you tell me once I'm in my normal uniform," I said, folding my arms. Gracie looked at me for a long moment and smiled. "I was hoping you were going to say that," she said with an evil smirk. She got up from the table and started for my dad's office. "Wait!" I yelled before getting up from the table. I didn't mean it. Gracie still walked to my dad's office. I knew what Gracie was going to tell me. I knew that my life as Adam was now over. "Gracie, looks, I can't be stuck wearing this," I said, pulling at the jumper. "I can't, I'll be made fun of." I hoped that Gracie would change her mind, but Gracie continued to head to my father's office. "Shoot!" I whispered. I struggled to keep up with her. We passed Mrs. Yolkman in the hall. She turned around and watched us both practically fast walk to my dad's office. "Ladies, slow down, don't be in such a hurry," she yelled out. I wondered if Mrs. Yolkman had recognized me. Did she know that one of the girls that she just told to slow down was really me? We got to the school's office and Gracie threw open the door. Both of Gracie's parents were sitting in the chairs in front of Dad's desk. They had been talking, but stopped when we entered the room. "So, Gracie, what have you decided?" Dad asked. I looked over at Gracie with another pleading look. At that moment I wish I could control her mind and force her to say that my punishment was don't and that I could go back to a boy. He didn't listen to me at all. "Mr. Trinan," Gracie said. "All he cares about is going back to wearing a boy's uniform." Dad looked at me. I could see the surprise in his face. "Well, Adam, you don't have to worry about it anymore," Gracie continued. I looked at her hopeful. Was she going to let me return to being Adam after all? "Plus, please," I whispered. "Mr. Trinan, Amanda deserves to be a girl for the rest of the school year." "No," I said in a little squeak. "Thank you, Gracie," my dad said before turning to me. "Amanda, from now on you are now officially a female student named Amanda here. You will no longer be called Adam. Do you understand?" "But Dad, this isn't fair." I tried to protest, but Dad wasn't having it. I stopped. I knew what the look on his face said. "Yes, sir," I replied in resignation. Tears were forming in my eyes as I thought about what that meant. Everyone was going to meet Amanda. There was nothing that I could do to stop that. Once Gracie and her parents left Dad's office, Dad took me to a conference room where the counselor was working on setting up the school's printer. I was forced to hand over my old ID, the same one that Rhea had found after the Easter Princess contest. Dad took the ID and cut it in two with a pair of scissors. As he was doing this, the counselor positioned me in front of the camera. "Smile," she said, sitting in the office chair. I didn't smile, I couldn't. Out of pity, the counselor snapped the photo with me still looking miserable. I looked at my ID as Dad took me to Mrs. Yolkman's room. The name Amanda Marie Trinton was printed on it along with my new picture. I looked at the girl in the photo for a long time. Yesterday the girl volunteered to wear a dress, today the girl is hesitant and scared to see anyone. As I walked down the hallway, I could feel the bottom of the jumper dress uniform sway around my legs. During the weekend I used to like that feeling, but now it just felt as weird to me as my first day. To anyone who didn't know me, Dad just looked like he was escorting a female student down the hallway. However, to anyone that knew me could tell that I wasn't a girl and that I was in fact a boy in the girls' school uniform. "Dad, didn't I do everything you and Mom wanted?" I asked. "I mean, I became a girl for the weekend, I became Easter Princess, I even wore a dress home. Haven't I been punished enough?" Dad stopped in the hallway and bent down so we were eye to eye. I expected him to be angry that I asked, but instead he just looked at me for a second and smiled. "Amanda, what do you think would have been the key to getting off of Gracie's punishment?" Dad asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "I don't know," I honestly answered. Dad sighed a little and led me to a bench that was outside Mrs. Yolkman's door. "Adam, Gracie wanted you to hear why she had grown out her hair, for you to realize that you had hurt her emotionally when you had cut her hair. She had hoped that making you wear girls' clothes for a few days would have taught you humility. But instead, when you rushed her, she figured out that you didn't learn your lesson. For that I am ashamed of you." I looked up and tried to meet my dad's eyes. The task that Gracie had set out was so simple: just listen to her, apologize, and admit I was wrong. I was so close to being a boy again and I screwed it up. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, my voice cracked a little. "I know," he said, "but it's too late, Gracie has already chosen, and you must live with that." Dad got up and held his hand to me to take. I took it and slowly got up. "Hopefully this makes you a better man when you grow up," Dad said before knocking on Mrs. Yolkman's door. "If I ever become a man," I whispered. "You will be one day," Dad said, patting me on the shoulder. Dad opened the door. The sound of Mrs. Yolkman's old wary voice filled the hallway. My throat felt dry as I thought about what I was doing. I slowly walked inside the classroom. Mrs. Yolkman looked over at the door to see who had entered her classroom and stopped when she saw me standing there. I looked over to my classmates and they had all stopped writing down notes too and instead looked up and stared at me. In the very back I could see my old seat. Eric also watched me, and when our eyes met, he smirked a little. It was almost like he was trying to hold in his laughter. After all, me wearing a girl's uniform made me extremely a sissy. Then I looked at Gracie. She sat in the front row with her arms crossed, smiling. Her work was done. She had single-handedly made me the biggest sissy in the whole entire school, and now that she had succeeded there was nothing left to do but watch and enjoy. "Listen up!" Dad called out in a loud booming voice. Everyone in the classroom stopped staring at me and looked over to Dad. "This is Amanda," Dad said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Please treat her with respect." I looked around at classmates, all of them I had known since we were in preschool, yet now I was seeing them like it was our first time meeting. "Amanda, take your seat," Dad instructed me. I nodded my head and walked slowly to my seat in the back of the class, but Mrs. Yeoman stopped me. "Amanda dear, that is no longer your seat, this one is," she said, pointing to a desk that is right in front of her desk. I sighed and walked over to it. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I walked over to it. There were two girls next to where I sat now, Bridget and Jamie. Dad nodded at Mrs. Yeoman and left the room. I was probably the only one that knew that he had left. Everyone else's gaze remained firmly on me. "Welcome back, Mrs. Amanda," Mrs. Yeoman said before turning around and continuing her lesson. Slowly my classmates looked away from me and back to Mrs. Yeoman. I shrunk down in my seat a little bit as I looked around a little bit. No one will say anything about me while Mrs. Yeoman is here. Chapter 27: Adam the new girl. I was the last to go outside onto the playground. Mrs. Yeoman let the boys line up in line first and then had all the girls line up after them. I tried to stand up when Mrs. Yeoman had told the boys to line up, but once Mrs. Yeoman saw me getting up, she quickly told me to sit down. Eric, who was already standing in line, looked over at me and smirked. "Yeah, stay with the girls," he taunted. I wanted to tell him to shut up, that I was a boy no matter what I was wearing. But instead, his words were haunting me. On Thursday I thought he was my best friend. Now I guess he only sees me as the one thing I feared being seen as, a sissy. "Quiet, Eric, or you can join Amanda in wearing a girl's uniform," Mrs. Yeoman said. "I'm sure being Erica for the rest of the school year would be fun, right?" Eric just shook his head and faced back towards the door. Now I was outside on the playground. I looked over to my former group of friends. They were both sitting at the picnic table as they both looked down at Alex's Game Boy. Occasionally they both would look over to me. Part of me was hoping that they were trying to figure out whether they should come over and try to regain our friendship, but of course I knew they were laughing at me. How did I know that, you ask? Because that is exactly what I would have done if I was in their position. I ended up finding a small vacant bench that overlooked the school's playground and sat down. I made sure my legs were together. I knew I was free to go on the playground, run and play with the other kids, but I didn't know how I could while wearing the girls' jumper. The school's jumper is shorter than most of the dresses I wore during Easter break. The jumper is now above my knees. There are also pleats on the bottom of the jumper, causing the jumper to move around more than the dresses had. I looked over to the other girls who were wearing the jumper uniform without any pleats, and I envied them. They must be more comfortable. "Hey Adam!" I heard a girl's voice say behind me, shaking me out of my thoughts. I looked behind me and saw Bethany and Bailey walking towards me. Bethany and Bailey are both identical twin sisters. I have known both girls since kindergarten. Until this year, they had been in separate classes to keep teachers from confusing one twin or another twin. But then last year it had been discovered that the twins swapped places regularly, mainly to take tests for the other twin or to participate in a fun activity the other twin didn't want to do. It was only until they were caught one day that the school decided that they needed to be kept in the same class so they couldn't switch again. This meant that poor Mrs. Yeoman now must remember which twin was which. To help Mrs. Yeoman, Bethany always wears her hair up in a ponytail while Bailey always wears hers down. I didn't say anything to the girls and just stayed looking straight ahead at the playground, looking at other kids playing and having fun. "Hey Adam!" Bethany said again. Or Amanda, Bailey said. "What do you want?" I asked, since I know I wasn't going to get rid of them. Gracie just told us why you are now a girl for. Bailey said. I rolled my eyes. Of course she would tell people that she had come up with a way to make a boy dress like a girl. When the two girls figured out that I wasn't going to say anything, they both looked at each other, and Bethany sat on the bench next to me while Bailey sat in the grass in front of us. Do you want to know why you are stuck wearing that uniform? Bethany asked. Could it be because I cut her hair and so she decided to make me be a girl for the weekend, then thought it would be fun to just have me in this stupid thing for the rest of the school year? I asked. No. Bailey said, then stopped. Well, not just for that. Then what? I asked. It's because you didn't listen to me. Gracie said behind me, scaring me. I didn't hear her come up behind me and she gave me a little bit of a fright. I did what you told me to. I protested once I could recover myself. I told your parents to make you a girl for the Easter break to help out the other girls that you had picked on. Gracie said, that weekend was supposed to show you that girls were human too, and probably better than boys. Behind her both Bethany and Bailey nodded their heads in unison. So why am I wearing this now? I asked, pointing to the jumper uniform. Gracie looked at me for a few seconds, probably trying to figure out how she was going to answer my question. I wanted to teach you humility, she said softly. That was the only way I was going to allow you out of your punishment. I looked at her with a quizzical look. Do you know why I had long hair? Gracie asked. No. I answered. My older sister Jessica died of cancer. When she was going through chemotherapy she lost her hair. To help her with the loss of her hair, my dad gave her a real hair wig. I saw how much the wigs made Jessica feel better. One of the things I promised her before she died was that I would grow my hair out so I could donate my hair to make wigs to make other people feel better. My heart dropped as I listened to Gracie. Bailey got up and hugged Gracie, who was about to burst into tears. Gracie stopped for several minutes as she listened to the soothing, reassuring words from Bailey. I kept my hands in my pocket and my head down. I was officially the biggest jerk ever. I guess I really deserve to wear this, I said, looking down at the bottom of the dress. If you had shown this kind of humility when we were talking this morning, I would have known you had learned something this weekend and I would have released you from your punishment. No one here would have known about you being Amanda. I'm sorry. I whispered. I know I made a mistake and now I am paying for it. From the other side of the playground, I heard Mrs. Yogman blow her whistle, signaling the end of recess. Gracie surprised me as she held her hand out for me to take. Come on, Amanda, she said, taking my hand. Both Bethany and Bailey waited till I got up and slowly walked to the line. I could still feel tears on my cheeks as I walked to the end of the line to where the other girls stood waiting. I didn't see or notice Eric and Alex looking at me as I passed them. I didn't notice that they were around till they came up behind me and pulled the skirt of the jumper up to show off my underwear. Adam has panties on! Alex proclaimed. I quickly swatted him away and quickly went to the back of the line where Gracie, Bethany and Bailey stood next to me. That's enough! I heard Mrs. Yolkman say to Alex and Eric. Go to the principal, both of you! I looked up to see both boys leaving the line and heading inside. I could tell both didn't expect to get caught by Mrs. Yolkman. You're lucky! Bethany said, usually Mrs. Yolkman is blind as a bat. She must have her guard up after what you did. Bailey said. It is! I replied. As I waited for Mrs. Yolkman to count us and make sure that we were all here. I couldn't help but feel bad for every time I picked on a girl. While I have never lifted the jumper of a girl's uniform, I could help but feel that this was a lesson for me. The bully has now become the bullied. Chapter 28, Heading Home. To my dismay, Dad didn't drive me home from school. I don't know why I expected him to drive me home. I guess I figured he wouldn't want me walking home wearing the girl's uniform. Of course, if that was true, he probably would have stopped me from wearing girls' clothes all weekend long. Sometime after the third recess and school letting out, it had started to rain. Thunder could be heard throughout the school and big raindrops fell all around us. As soon as the bell rang releasing us, I jumped out of my seat and ran to the door of the classroom. Before Mrs. Yolkman could say anything to me, I was already gone and halfway through the hallways. Other students started filing out of their classrooms and I had to duck and wave to get around them. "Young lady, walk please," I could hear one teacher say behind me. But I ignored them and went out to the bus. I was one of the first students to get on the bus. I sat down midway and watched as other students got on one by one. No one sat in the seat next to me. Instead, two girls sat in the seat in the opposite row than me. By the color of their green polos, they were in the 3rd grade, a year younger than me. I looked over to them and saw them looking back to me, then whispering, then they started giggling. "What?" I asked. "Are you that boy that is now forced to wear a girl's uniform?" one of the girls asked. "No." I lied, but they just looked at each other and shook their heads. I knew now that they didn't believe me. "Oh, we know it's you," one of the girls said. "You are pretty much the talk of the school." "Well, he's not me," I replied. "Oh yeah? What is your name?" the other girl asked, but as I was going to answer, the first girl grabbed the ID tag from my book bag. I was right, Candace. He is the boy in a girl's uniform. Both girls laughed and rolled my eyes and grabbed my book bag back and grabbed my homework. The trip from school to home takes a little over 45 minutes. Luckily Mrs. Yeoman gave us enough homework that I should be busy for the rest of the trip. I only stopped my homework when we started getting close to my stop. By this time, I had my feet on the bus seat across the aisle. The two girls next to me had already gotten off at their respective bus stops. I watched out my window as the bus approached my bus stop. Luckily it wasn't raining anymore outside, and I hoped that it wouldn't as I walked to my house. I quickly put the almost finished homework back into my book bag and got up from my seat, fully aware that most eyes were on me. I walked down the aisle and from the bus, trying to act like I didn't care that everyone could see that I was wearing a girl's uniform. I was glad when I saw that Alex and Eric were not on the bus. According to what Bethany and Bailey heard, they both had been taken home by their parents. "Serves them right," I had said when I heard the news. The bus stop is 2 blocks away from where I live. Usually, I can count on walking with Eric since he lives nearby, but since he wasn't here, I now must walk home alone. But after how he treated me, I didn't feel too bad about it. I walked home looking around as I walked. Who could see me wearing this? I prayed that no one in around will need to go outside, but as I passed by my next door neighbor Mr. Ryan's house, my heart sank as I saw him leave his house to go out to his car. He was looking down at his keys while he was walking, but once he looked up and saw me, he stopped. "Adam?" he asked when he saw me. He looked me up and down. This was probably an odd sight for him to see. He looked at me up and down and tried to figure out what exactly I was wearing. "Hi Mr. Ryan," I said, giving him a wave and then looking forward as I gripped my book bag tighter and began to walk a little faster. I could hear Mr. Ryan call out to me, probably wondering why I was a girl's school uniform for. But I just ignored him and walked the final steps to my house. I opened the front door to my house and shut it behind me. The living room was quiet as I walked across the hardwood floor. I know that both Mom and Dad will be still at their jobs, so I now have a few hours to myself. I dropped my book bag onto the couch and walked upstairs to my room. The knowledge that I was finally home and that my closet and dresser were upstairs, both filled with boy clothes, practically lifted me up the stairs. This was a no more girl clothes. Yes, I will still have to wear the jumper tomorrow. Yes, everyone knows about Amanda. And yes, I do still have some girl clothes in my room that Mom and Dad might make me wear sometimes, but right now I can finally wear boys' clothes. Or I could have if my bedroom door wasn't locked, and if there wasn't a note on the door telling me not to open it. My heart sank when I read the last part of the note. Mom expects me to be still wearing the uniform when she gets home. Defeated, I walked back down the stairs and back into the living room. I grabbed my book bag and walked into the dining room and grabbed my homework from my book bag. I sat down at my seat at the table and with nothing better to do, I worked on my homework. Chapter 29, My New Bedroom. Mom got home an hour after I did. I had already finished my homework and I was watching TV. I looked up as she walked through the door. "Hello Amanda," Mom said as she inside the house. "Hey Mom! I said, getting up and helping her with the 2 bags that she had in her hands. "Thank you." Mom said, "Just put them in the kitchen, I am making spaghetti and meatballs for dinner tonight." "Great," I said, taking the food to the kitchen. I thought about asking her about my bedroom and why was the room locked up for, but I didn't know how to ask. "So how was work?" I asked instead of asking about my room. "I didn't go," Mom said. "I left Gretchen in charge of the hair salon today." I stopped for a second. Mom hardly ever took off at a salon, and now she has taken off twice, both Thursday and today. "So, what did you do today?" I asked when I saw Mom walk into the kitchen. "Oh, you want to see?" she asked. I looked at her wondering if I should, or shouldn't, but then I remembered that I was Mom who wrote the note on my door telling me not to go into my room. Now curious, I nodded my head and followed her upstairs into my bedroom door. Mom took out a key from her pocket, unlocked the doorknob, and slowly opened the door to my room. I gasped and was left speechless when I saw what my room now looks like. My bed no longer had my black comforter on it, but now has a white comforter with big purple and pink polka dots. The 2 pillows on the head of the bed now have pink and purple pillowcases over them. 2 stuffed bears sat in between the 2 pillows. Sitting on my desk is fingernail polish of different colors. There is also a jewelry box where I can see different types of multicolored beaded bracelets, necklaces, and hair ties, many of the items I have seen other girls my age wearing in it. My old desk chair was gone, replacing it is a pink office chair. Sitting on the chair is a brand new pink book bag. On the front the word Amanda is stitched onto it with white thread. On the walls were no longer posters of different sports teams and cool cars, instead they were replaced by pictures of cartoon princesses and pictures of me during the past weekend as Amanda. Above the headboard of my bed is the word Amanda in big pink letters. Every new thing I looked at in the room was different and extremely girly. I turned around to Mom to ask her why I needed to have a girly room for, but she just stopped me. "Go look in your dresser," Mom said. I turned and looked at my dresser. It looked like it wasn't touched by my mom's girly makeover. I slowly opened the top drawer of the dresser, and my heart sank when I saw the colorful panties rolled up laying the drawer. Next to them are socks and tights, both white for the school uniform and colorful, neatly folded. None of my boy clothes were in there. I closed that drawer and then opened the next one below it. Inside is the bikini that I got at the cabin. Laying next to the bikini is 2 one-piece swimsuits. "You never told me which type of swimsuits you like, so if you want another bikini just let me know, or you can try a tankini," Mom said. I slid the drawer closed. The other drawers were all the same. All of them were filled with girly clothes and there was no sign of my boy clothes anywhere. I walked to my closet to find that my closet now has all girls' shirts, and dresses, including 9 new uniform jumpers just like the one that I am currently wearing. Luckily the uniform polos are not as girly as the one that I am currently wearing. I looked over to Mom. The question I wanted to ask was stuck in my throat. I know Gracie said that I must be stuck as a girl for school. But I was hoping that I wouldn't be stuck wearing girls' clothes at home too. "Why?" I asked finally. "Gracie continued your punishment," Mom said. "You are now Amanda at school and at home. Just till the end of the school year, right?" I asked. "At the end of the school year you won't have to wear the school uniforms anymore, but your dad and I agreed to keep you as Amanda until it is the end of summer." My mouth dropped as I realized that I will not be able to dress as a boy again until September. Chapter 30 New School Punishment. I walked into Mrs. Yokman's room and sat down in my assigned seat. I was one of the first kids in the classroom. I sat down in my assigned seat and looked around for Eric and Alex. Both were not at their desk yet. I wondered if Dad had given them more than 1 day of out-of-school suspension. I had wanted to ask him yesterday, but I wasn't sure how to ask. Dad usually didn't like to talk about how he disciplines other students. Gracie walked into the classroom a little after me. I watched as she put her book bag under her desk. She then looked at me and came over to me. "I honestly didn't think that Mr. Trindon was going to make you wear the girls' uniform after yesterday's events with Eric and Alex," Gracie said. I looked back at the two chairs Alex and Eric sat in inside. "No," I said, "and I bet their punishment won't be as severe as mine was too." "Maybe," Gracie said, sitting in the seat next to me. "But now your dad knows that this is a good punishment for boys. So maybe he will try it again." "I doubt it," I said, even though I couldn't help but think about Alex and Eric in the same uniform that I must wear. Gracie was about to say something else, but then students started to come into the classroom. Gracie looked back at the door and then at me. "Maybe it is something to just be hopeful for," Gracie said before returning to her seat. Slowly the classroom filled up. No one seemed to notice me or look at me. Apparently, a boy wearing a girl's jumper is old news to them. Mrs. Yogman walked in and got to her seat. I looked around for both Eric and Alex, but they were not sitting in their seat. I sat back in my seat, thankful that I didn't have to deal with them today. "Good morning, boy and girls," Mrs. Yogman said, like she always says when she enters the classroom at the start of the day. "Good morning, Mrs. Yogman," we all replied. The morning seemed to be proceeding like normal. Mrs. Yogman had us bring our homework to the front. We did as we were told and then sat back down at our desk ready for Mrs. Yogman's lesson. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. We all looked at the door as Mrs. Yogman walked over and opened it. My dad appeared in the doorway, and for a second I thought he was going to ask for me. Instead, he came into the room and motioned for Eric and Alex to come in too. There was some gasp in the classroom as Eric and Alex both came in wearing the girls' uniform. The same uniform that I was wearing. The only difference was that both Eric and Alex both had buzz cuts, so they stood out more boyish than I have. The only other difference is that Eric was wearing white tights, the same white tights that most girls wore when it was cold outside. Other than that, both Amy and Eric were wearing a girl's red polo, the black jumper uniform, and Mary Jane's. I looked over to Gracie and she looked back over to me and smiled a little, acknowledging that I knew that she was right. "Listen up," Dad said in his most commanding voice. "This is Erica and Amy, please treat them with respect. Yesterday they did something to one of you that was wrong." I sank down a little in my seat with the mention of the events of yesterday. "Let me make this clear. If anyone is caught picking on or harassing other students, then I will give out strict punishments like this." He motioned to both Erica and Amy, who both looked like they were going to be sick. Both looked like they were not sure about how to wear the jumper or any dress. I silently thanked my parents for giving me a whole Easter break to get used to wearing girls' clothes. Both Erica and Amy nodded and walked back to their seats. Unlike me, they got to keep their original seats. Dad watched as the two sat down and then nodded in Mrs. Yogman before he left the classroom. Once we were released to go to recess, I walked outside and waited for Erica and Amy to walk outside, but instead Bethany took my hand and pulled me over to the same park bench that we were at yesterday. There Gracie and Bailey waited for us. "I told you that your dad would make them wear girls' uniforms," Gracie said when I got close. "Yeah," I said, looking back to see the two now walking awkwardly to the picnic table. "Were you like that when you first wore a dress?" Bailey asked. "Kind of," I said. "I'm just glad that I was at my house the first time. I wonder how long they will be wearing the jumper for," Bethany said before sitting down on the park bench. I excused myself and walked over to the picnic table. It is hard to believe that just a few days ago I was sitting right here talking to both Alex and Eric just like normal. It's almost scary what a week can do. "Hey!" I said once I got close enough. Both Erica and Amy looked up at me. It was only now that I could see that both had purple polish on their fingernails, and both had on necklaces with their new names on them. "Hey!" Amy said sheepishly. "Look, we're sorry for what we did yesterday." "It's nothing," I said, even though I didn't want to forgive them. I still felt violated by what they had done. "So how long do you have to wear your uniform?" Erica asked. I looked down at the jumper and then back at the two. "Until the end of the school year," I replied. "You?" "Till the end of the week," Amy said. "Lucky," I whispered before sitting down next to them. It took a few minutes of awkwardly making small talk before all three of us could relax and talk about something other than wearing girls' uniforms. Eventually Gracie, Bailey and Bethany came over and sat with us. To the casual observer we just looked like a group of girls talking to each other. A week ago, we were 3 boys, Alex, Eric, and Adam, and 3 girls, Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey. Now we are all girls. Amy, Erica, Amanda, Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey. It's just amazed me that this whole thing started with one stupid bet and a forced haircut. Is it weird that friends can be made during a punishment? Is it also weird that friendships can be made stronger during a punishment? Chapter 31. 1 month later. Mrs. Yolkman looked at all of us in her classroom. She looked like she was going to either cry or jump up and down with delight. Today is the last day of school. For the students this means the last day of 4th grade. For Mrs. Yolkman this means it is the last day before starting her retirement. To celebrate this, Dad had brought in pizza and we all gave her a surprise retirement party. Every one of her current students was there, along with some students that she had in the past. We were all allowed to eat pizza, play games, and talk to the other visitors in the classroom. Our small classroom was packed with people, so no one noticed that I had walked to the back of the room and sat down on the floor with Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey. The 3 other girls were playing Uno and I was getting ready to play once they were done with the current round. All 3 girls sat with their feet tucked under them and I did the same. I was now used to wearing the jumper and the feeling of wearing it felt normal to me. "Do you ladies need a drink?" I heard Eric asked as he stood over us. He and Alex were both holding multiple red Solo cups in their arms. Both Eric and Alex had been released from their punishment on time, making me the only boy wearing the girls' uniform. It was kind of a shame though, I kind of miss having Erica and Amy around, but I'm glad that Eric and Alex are still my friend. I took one of the cups from Eric and took a drink. The other girls did the same and both Eric and Adam sat on the ground, making our small circle bigger. Gracie went ahead and forfeited the game so that they could start a new one, this time dealing in Eric, Alex, and I into the game. I was sitting next to Gracie on one side and Alex on another. Kind of poetic considering that it was me and my stupid actions that brought out friend group together. I took the cards in my hand and looked at them, before looking around at my friends. I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if Gracie had released me from my punishment. Would my friend group have included Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey? Would I have changed? I stopped myself on the question of if I would have changed or not. Of course, I would have. This past month has proved that. "Are you going to go?" Alex asked, awaking me from my thoughts. I looked at my cards and chose a yellow 2 from my hand and laid it on the deck. "So, are you all coming to my party tonight?" I asked. Everyone answered that they were coming. "Remember what the dress code is?" I said to Eric and Alex and they both rolled their eyes. "My sister is letting me borrow one of her dresses," Alex said, "so don't worry, Amy will be there." "I'll have to borrow a dress from you," Eric said, putting a red 7 on the pile. "I don't have one." "That's fine," I replied, "in fact I have a pink one that you can borrow." Gracie looked at me and then silently mocked the Easter Princess's one. I nodded and put a finger to my mouth, telling her to keep quiet about it. Gracie nodded her head. Eric looked at the 2 of us questionably and then back at his cards. "Wait, which dress?" he asked now, alarmed. "Don't worry, Erica, we will take care of you," Bailey said. "Just be ready to be really girly," Bethany finished. We all laughed while Eric tried to look mad. It became my turn again and I put down a green 4, causing Gracie to pick up a card from the deck since she didn't have a green or a 4 card. Over the rest of the school year many boys were put into the girls' uniforms as a form of punishment. Most of them just spent a day in the uniform, some of them a week. I kept hoping that either Alex or Eric would be forced to reprise their roles as Amy and Erica, but to my dismay they both stayed out of trouble. This party was the only way I could think of to make them Amy and Erica again. "Excuse me, Amanda," I heard a voice come from behind me. I looked up to find a boy named Ben standing over me. He was the only other boy that was wearing a girl's jumper besides me, and he stood awkwardly as I could tell that he was feeling weird wearing the jumper. "What?" I asked. I motioned that he could sit down next to me. All of us looked away as he sat down and attempted to sit like how I was so his boxers weren't showing. "Sorry," he said sheepishly. "This is my first time wearing a dress. I got caught throwing rocks this morning and I was given the option of wearing a girl's uniform or miss the party. So, you choose the uniform," Bailey said. "Nice choice." "Thanks," Ben said. "By the way, my girly name is Becky, my mom chose it for me." We all told Becky that her name was a good one. Becky shifted a little in her jumper and then sighed. "How do you get used to wearing this?" she asked, motioning to the jumper. "It takes practice," Alex said, laying his card down on the pile. "Just be glad it is for one day and not for a whole month like Amanda." Eric finished. I looked down at my own uniform and then back at Becky. To be honest, I have been wearing girls' clothes now for so long that it is almost second nature, I said, grabbing a hold of the bottom of the jumper. Becky nodded and then turned around to her book bag. She began to rummage through it and then pulled out her new yearbook. "Do you mind signing my yearbook?" she asked. I nodded and flipped open the book to the page with our class all arranged in individual photos. I quickly located my photo and stopped. The pictures were taken before my punishment. I looked at the picture of Adam. Me being known as Adam was so long ago, I almost didn't recognize my boy self. I quickly signed my name as Amanda next to my picture and then handed the yearbook to Alex so he could sign it. Chapter 32 School's Out Party. Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey all sat on my bed. They stared at the two boys who had just arrived at my party. Both boys stood there awkwardly as the three girls looked them over and talked amongst themselves on how they could make them over the best. Gracie sat in the middle of group. She had on the same black dress that I had been forced to wear at the start of my punishment. Looking at it again made me remember how hard it was for me during the first few days of the punishment. Both Bailey and Bethany wore identical red A-line dresses. The only way I could tell them apart was that Bethany still had her hair up from school. Both Eric and Adam both were wearing shorts and t-shirts. They both arrived at my house knowing that they had to change their clothes when they got here. Like Alex said during Mrs. Yoakman's retirement party, he had brought one of his sister's old dresses. The blue dress with lace flowers on the top currently sat on my bed. I just stayed sitting in my computer chair already wearing a white sleeveless dress that has a floral pattern on the skirt. I also had a brand new pair of wedges that I picked out at the mall the other day with Mom. "Okay Amy, go get into your dress first," Gracie said, taking over. "That way we can have Erica over here pick out the dress that she is going to wear." Both boys frowned at her. I know that they were not used to using the girly names or the female pronouns. Alex took his sister's dress and unzipped the back of it and then started to walk to the bathroom. "Wait!" Bailey said, stopping Alex from leaving. "Are you two wearing panties?" she asked. Both Alex and Eric looked at each other and then pulled at their waistbands, revealing that they were indeed wearing panties. Alex had on pink panties while Erica had on purple-colored panties. "Okay, you're good," Bailey said, allowing them to leave. "Okay, what dress do you three want me to wear?" Eric asked, turning around, and looking into my open closet. "It's your choice," I said, getting up to join him. "Pick anyone that you want." Eric looked for a second and then shut his eyes. He fell along the dresses for a second before blindly closing his hand around one and took it from the rack. Eric opened her eyes and looked at it for a second. And then looked at me. "Oh, I can't wear this," he said, holding up the dress. "Why not?" Bethany asked. "It's pink," Eric said in a reply. The dress that Eric had chosen is a powder pink lacy dress with small cap sleeves. The dress is knee-length and has a rounded neck to it. I took the dress from Eric and took it off its hanger. I then unzipped the back of the dress and readied it for Eric. "Take off your shirt," I said, motioning to Eric's t-shirt. Eric looked over to the other three girls who promptly looked away to give him more privacy. Erica then did as she was told, and afterwards, I handed him the dress. Eric slid it on and then turned around so I could zip it up in the back. He then slid his shorts off. "How does it look?" Eric asked. "Very girly, but in a good way," Gracie replied. Just then Alex reappeared in my room. I quickly walked over to her and zipped up the back of his dress and looked him over. "This dress looks great on you," I said, looking around him. "Thanks," Alex said, "I already can't wait to take it off." The other girls laughed a little as the two boys sat down on my bed. "Hopefully this will be the last time I wear a dress," Eric said as she looked down at the skirt of the dress. "I agree," Alex said, "being a boy is way better." Gracie, Bethany, and Bailey all laughed, but I remained quiet. I looked at all my friends for a few seconds. Before my punishment, doing what Alex, Eric and I were doing would have gotten us called sissies for sure. We thought of ourselves being better than girls, and thinking girls were gross. Now here we were, two of us are now wearing dresses because I told them they had to in order to attend my party. I know that as soon as my party is over, both Alex and Eric will come back up here, redress back into their shorts and t-shirts, and leave for home never to wear a dress again. But for me, that was a different story. I had to start wearing girls' clothes due to a punishment. For the past month and a half I have gotten used to the clothes and started to like the idea of me being a girl. "Can I tell you all something?" I asked, and they all looked at me. "Go ahead, Amanda," Gracie said. I took a deep breath and leaned against the door to my room. The moment is finally here. This is the moment that I had been waiting for ever since I made up my mind last week. I have decided to stay as Amanda permanently, I said. Gracie's, Bailey's and Bethany's eyes widened with excitement as they heard the news. "So, you're not going to be Adam again when we go back to school?" Alex asked. "No," I said, "I like being a girl too much." "Well," Eric said, getting up from his spot on the bed, "I'm sure that I can speak for everyone here when I say that it's about time you admitted it." He gave me your hand and I shook it. From that moment on I knew that I would never go back to being Adam again. Dear fans! Thank you so much for listening, and reacting to the original version of Punishment. It is because of you that I have decided to make this alternate ending just for fun. Now buckle up! Tuesday will be the premiere of Punishment 2, Return of Amanda. The story starts 1 year after the events of the original timeline. Adam is bored in his class, he's already ready to go to Brittany's birthday party in Missouri, and he can't wait to leave school. But his day goes crazy when his best friend Brittany asks him for a favor. What will happen in Punishment 2? Every chapter is released every Tuesday at noon Central Time. I hope to catch you there. Love, Olivia Julius.